Hello, this is Storybooks channel. New videos are posted every day. Subscribe and click the bell.
Adriana Macduff didn't remember her mother, nor could she. After all, her mother was gone when she gave birth to Adriana. Her father, Rick Macduff, was then the deputy director of a factory that produced batteries and accumulators. It was a responsible position, so he simply could not afford to indulge in sad thoughts or even worse, to drink. After all, Rick was to raise a daughter, in the beginning grief-stricken widower, who, according to relatives, loved and wife Kathy, without memory withdrew into himself. And when he slightly withdrew from grief with his head, went to work. As a result, Rick took the chair of the director of the plant, who retired a year after the sad event. And 3 years later, the plant was closed. Fortunately, Macduff still had some savings, so he and his 4-year-old daughter did not face starvation. But money, as we know, has a way of running out. And the most frustrating thing is that it happens much faster than one can assume. So it was not worth delaying the search for a job. However, he had no luck with jobs. Macduff was ready to work as anything, even as a loader. But employers, apparently, were afraid that he would start sticking his nose in everywhere, pointing out the faults of his superiors, and as a consequence, marking him for top positions. Meanwhile, money was running out. One day, when Rick came home, tired, hungry, and angry, after another rejection, he received a call from an old college buddy, Sam. "How's it going?" the classmate inquired. "How are things?" with a sigh. Macduff interrogated. "Yes," as Robert was. "Did they close the plant?" "Yeah, I heard. That's why I'm calling, to be honest." "What's going on with your job?" "Nothing. The bosses are afraid I'll sit them out. I don't see any other reason not to, but I guess you'll be interested in my offer." "What offer?" "Me, Rick, open your own business," said Sam. "And such a competent partner." "Competent in what?" asked Rick. "What do you mean, competent in what?" Morrison snorted. "In the one that you and I have been studying for 5 years. I need a good engineer." Macduff stretched out. "And what kind of business is a car service?" "No, it's an audio-video and appliance repair firm. I'm offering to take a stake." "Interesting. I'm interested. It's interesting. But you have to invest in the business. And as you know, I'm broke." "Don't even worry about it," cheerfully said Sam. "I have enough money for everything I need for the first time." "Well, you'll make money, and you'll buy your share." So Murphy thought. I was having a hard time finding a job, so there wasn't much choice. In fact, there wasn't one. But business is a risky business. It could pay for itself. But I didn't want to have to take off my last pants to pay off my debts. Besides, Macduff had heard many stories about friends who started a business together and then parted as best enemies, and the fact that Sam had always been a man of action and his conscience was fine. Not an argument. In business, as you know, there are no friends. Anyway, no matter how it was done, the risk of being broke was high, especially at 90. The conversation with the competitors was short, and the players were not slumbering. For these comrades, a new company is like a new portion of fall for vultures. It wasn't. Rick thought. No risk, no risk, no champagne. And he said yes. Well done. Morrison was happy. "You won't regret it. We've made such a deal with you. Mom, don't be sad. We'll show everyone the Cuskin's mother." Suddenly, Macduff was infected by his classmates' enthusiasm. "Absolutely. Here's the story." Friends agreed to meet the next day in a cafe, which was in the center of the city. Rick looked at his watch and went to the kitchen for a snack. In an hour it was necessary to go to kindergarten Sunny, so it was worth hurrying. A daughter sees God. Rick was trying to be a good father. Anyway, as far as the material side of rebellion was concerned, there were lots of nice clothes, toys, colorful books, in short, anything that would delight a little girl. Adriana Macduff had everything but one thing a mother's love. Unfortunately, her perpetually busy father couldn't give it either. Rick never refused to nurse in the childhood joys of chocolate, 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 cake. No problem. He's a doll. Yes, please. And even when Rick's financial situation left a lot to be desired due to job loss, he managed to scrounge up the money to buy his daughter extra ice cream. Macduff took care of his daughter as best he could, but he couldn't give the girl just one caress. "My princess," proudly said Macduff proudly while showing off to friends. Photo by Adriana. However, he never once called the baby princess, and in the eyes never once came, said not kissed, and not at all because she did not love. It is fair to say that he behaved with restraint with everyone, with his parents, friends, and even his late wife, whom he adored. Macduff preferred to prove his love. Not, as he put it, verbiage, but deeds. That's exactly what Rick had told his mother when she chastised him for his lack of affection for Adriana. Yes, but a child is a child. It needs not only love but tenderness, the mother had remarked. Cindy, of course, remembered how she had hugged and kissed Rick when she visited him at the pioneer camp. He would blush and hurriedly pull away. Of course, many boys are embarrassed when their mothers kiss and hug them in public. However, Cindy could physically feel her son's discomfort. Rick tensed to the point of a compressed spring and trembled. It was something of a phobia. Did it never really wear off? I understand, but they don't. I hope it'll pass with time. Maybe it was because I wanted a son. The widower pondered, but nonsense. It would have been easier with a boy. That's true. But to love a child less just because it's a girl, that's wild. Some of the relatives were convinced. Rick thought the baby was responsible for her mother's death. Adriana reminded him of his late wife in one way or another. Murphy noted this argument with indignation. Being a man of judgment, he considered nothing of the sort. Thinking, Rick came to the conclusion that he was just shy of expressing his love for his daughter, as, indeed, for everyone he cared for. When Rick came to pick up Adriana at the kindergarten, the girl would run to her father and exclaim joyfully. Daddy Macduff would hug the girl awkwardly, as it were, and lightly, patting her on the back, would say, "But she went home." On the way home, the father bought Adriana something tasty. If she wanted to, he'd take her to the amusement park to ride the merry-go-round. The little girl had a favorite pony, pink with a white mane and trusting with blue eyes, with bumbling and eyelashes. In case anyone didn't get it, we're talking about the carousel pony. Adriana didn't want to ride any other papa. What if her pink favorite was busy? Adriana would pout her pink lips and stare at the boy or girl being ridden. At him with an unkind look, the little girl called her friend a frog. The cameraman always asked Adriana with a smile. Swore. Yes, it's important, the girl answered. Father and daughter walked out of the daycare center, and Rick asked, "Well, home? Or to the park?" "Well," swore, so clerked. Agreed. To the great joy of Freedom Allies. "Hi," she said cheerfully. "How are you?" And then she answered with a different voice. "Hi. I'm good." Adriana told her father she wanted to go home. "How's life? How's your daughter?" inquired Sam, after the men exchanged handshakes. "You doing okay?" Rick answered, "Quite well. Well, God willing, anyway." Rick, here's the concept. While discussing the details of the business, Macduff caught himself getting carried away. Maybe we could really make something work, I thought. The risk turned out to be more than worth it. Rick had paid Sam his half in a year and could now call himself a full partner with a clear conscience. The business brought a stable small profit in the beginning, and then quite a decent one, which the partners shared in half. There was a catastrophic lack of time at the dacha. Macduff would take Adriana to kindergarten in the morning, and his mother and sometimes his former mother-in-law would pick the girl up. When Rick came home from work, his daughter was already asleep. "You should get married," sighed Cindy, Rick's mother. Mary repeated thoughtfully, "Yes, Mary. Adriana needs a mother. Women's education is something you have to understand. What about you and Kelly? And who knows how long we have left? Will we make it to her transition age? That's the question." And at that time, A girl needs a mother just as much as she needs a mother now. You know what I mean? Yeah, I understand. But I haven't met someone I want to spend the rest of my life with, and Adriana, so she won't hurt me. They're all about the money. I used to be able to spot them like that. Macduff grinned, remembering when we attacked him when he was the director of the factory. But when the plant closed, there were fewer people who wanted to be associated with Rick. What's less? I thought with a chuckle. They all evaporated at once, and when Macduff became a businessman, the ladies here again. No, he doesn't want that kind of happiness. For money, not dough. Cindy agreed. But don't despair. Your wife will turn up. Yes, and do not despair, shrugged Rick. Frankly speaking, Macduff and did not think about marriage. Though, of course, it would be nice for a good woman to bear him a son, and heir to whom he could pass the business. Of course, Rick had a daughter, but in his opinion, women had nothing to do in business. Macduff had known many businesswomen, but none of them had inspired him with sympathy. All of them were cold and arrogant, and despite their expensive hairdos and brand-name clothes, not at all feminine. She wanted his daughter to be one of them. No way. So there's no way around it without being burned, as the mother put it. The business of former classmates developed surprisingly dynamically, and for 7 years has suffered a lot of changes. Now Rick and Sam were engaged not only in repair, but also the sale of equipment. The firm sold it to stores, and in the future it was planned to open its own store. And when we go to the park, ended Adriana at breakfast. When I have free time, and when will it be? That's what I don't know, Macduff invariably replied. So, 7 years. It was only at breakfast that they saw each other. The rest of the time the girl spent with her grandmothers. Daddy doesn't want to go out with me. I have to go out. Adriana would go to one grandmother or the other. When business was booming, both elderly women hastily explained to her granddaughter that her father is very busy. Bolotov himself felt guilty in front of his daughter. But business is business. Business, he does not wait. Besides, Rick worked tirelessly for his daughter. But Adriana will be everything for the sake of it. As he thought, you can and be patient. But the young Macduff Harris was not willing to be patient, and no argument worked on her. If he had talked to Lisa on Heart and kindly explained that he did not have enough time to communicate with her, she would have understood everything correctly. And since Rick was being restrained, he couldn't get through to his daughter. Dad, where are you going? Asked Adriana, yawning. I'm going to work. What are you doing up? It's Sunday, noted her daughter. And business doesn't care what day of the week it is. Businessmen don't have weekends or holidays. Anyway, I can't afford 5 businesses yet, said Adriana. Yes, business again, nodded her father. To his credit, he never raised his voice at his daughter. Macduff showed restraint in everything. And he's feeding us, by the way. Smart, bright beyond her years, Adriana understood everything except one thing. Her father wanted her to have nothing. As if we were starving, muttered the girl and defiantly turned away Adriana. She didn't want her father to see her tears. She was. You understood perfectly well, but you didn't show it. But he didn't know how to show his feelings openly, as if it were a sin. Then Macduff fell hard in love and was forced to be torn between his daughter and the woman he loved. She became a young saleswoman from the store in which he and Sam put the technique. Every day Rick became more and more convinced that Slaga is the woman with whom he would like to live the rest of his life. She was the only woman Macduff saw as the mother of his son. But how would Adriana feel about that? I spend so little time with her, he told his mother. I don't know how to tell Adriana that I want to marry Clara. Do you want to marry Clara? She exclaimed in surprise. Rick looked furtively at Lisa. The former mother-in-law was a frequent guest at Cindy's house, but Rick, because of the lack of time, did not often visit his mother. So there was little opportunity to talk to her alone. Why are you looking at me like that? Lisa asked with a slight chuckle. You're a young man. You need a wife. That's right. Life goes on. Kathy, you can't bring her memory back. Thank you, Lisa, Rick said quietly. It really meant a lot to me to hear that. She was embarrassed. The important thing is that your wife doesn't hurt Adriana. You don't have to worry about that either, Cindy said. She gave her son a fake, menacing look. She will. He'll have to deal with me. All three of them laughed. I don't even doubt that. But the way I see it, we have Adriana and me. So you really want to get married? Mother asked. Well, yes, I do. But let's invite your fiancée to visit, suggested Cindy. How about it? We'll set the table and you can introduce her. Lisa, how would you feel about that? Well, it's your business. Lisa replied with a sigh. There's a new person coming into your family. Aya, aren't you a member of our family? I interrupted her with mine, shaking my head. Well. First of all, you're Adriana's grandmother, like me, and the rest is nothing. It's true, Lisa. We are a family, and we will remain one. My new marriage doesn't change anything, Rick said. Thank you, she smiled, and the older woman's eyes settled. You're welcome. Cindy playfully leaned in. Well, how about a banquet? No question about it. Adriana Macduff was increasingly beginning to wonder if Daddy loved me. Her relationship with her father wasn't bad, but it wasn't warm either. Adriana grew up knowing nothing was off limits. Her father bought her beautiful clothes, filled her with toys, took her to the amusement park, circus, and other places that children love. Except that the tenderness of the girl did not see. When Adriana authorities, troops, father, he awkwardly patted his daughter on the back and said, well, I'm tired. Well, or something like that. When Adriana turned 11 to the girl, it occurred to her that her father considered her guilty for the death of his beloved wife. She had heard more than once from relatives and neighbors that Daddy loved his wife beyond memory. So maybe that was it. Mom's gone, but she is. Adriana and the father deep down regret that the wife is dead and the daughter is alive. Don't talk nonsense. Cindy cut her off when her granddaughter shared her thoughts. Who told you such nonsense? No one. Adriana answered with a shrug. Her grandmother looked at her incredulously, but the girl said yes. Really? No one. I thought of it myself. What made you think of such a bright idea? Daddy loves you. He just doesn't show it, Adriana sighed. Cindy sighed too. What's true? Really? Yes, she was aware of her son's temper, but she still hoped he would be able to break himself. Cindy had told Rick more than once to be gentle with her daughter. But what should you hug and kiss a girl and tell her how much you love her? Reprimanded Breaking. However, Cindy knew otherwise. Rick preferred to prove love with his body, and all sorts of tenderness, in his opinion, meant nothing. And even though her son didn't know how to show his feelings, that didn't mean Rick Macduff couldn't love. He did, and he did love. Yes, my little birdie, nodded Cindy. It doesn't show. Well, not showing doesn't mean he doesn't love. My wicked one understands my woe. I do, answered my granddaughter. From this day on, Adriana has set herself the task of arousing strong feelings in you. It's better to make the people feel good. At least she'll know her father cares. But a year passed, and Adriana's attempts to rouse her father never succeeded. One day, when Dad came home from work, he smelled of women's perfume. Adriana knew exactly what that meant and panicked. If Daddy got married, oh God, what would happen then? She'd read fairy tales about evil stepmothers, but she didn't take them seriously. That is, until Molly's father sent her abroad. Her stepmother is a bitch, whispered her friend and classmate Miranda. She had persuaded Molly's father to send her to a boarding house in Switzerland. And Lena could be trusted because she lived in the neighboring cottage. But that the same thing awaits me. With horror thought Adriana, we could only hope that it would not come to the wedding. However, we're having guests tonight, tomorrow night. I want you to meet a very nice woman. With a frugal smile, said the father with the woman, frowned the daughter. With the woman, confirmed Macduff. nodded Adriana. And what kind of woman? Well, how can I tell you? A very nice woman. You'll find out, Slaga. You'll like it. So, Clara. Adriana said thoughtfully. Yes, she wanted to say something else, but changed her mind. I'll still have time, smiling at her thoughts, thought the businessman's heiress. The chosen one was a blonde with perfectly straight hair, plump lips, and unbelievably blue eyes. Abram long eyelashes Abazami. The lady was dressed in a white cropped fur coat, under which was an extremely short pink dress. Like a Barbie doll. Clara. Stephen stretched out her hand with long pink nails decorated with bears and rhinestones. Adriana smiled radiantly at her potential stepdaughter. Do you like glamour? I love it. She smiled broadly in return. Do you? Well, pretty much, yes. Adriana giggled. Cindy came out of the kitchen and invited everyone to the table. Really, why are we standing in the aisle? I'm starving. Adriana noticed the disapproving look Cindy's grandmother gave her possible daughter-in-law. And that gave her hope. When everyone was seated at the table, Rick asked for a moment. Attention. Mama Adriana, Lisa. I'd like to introduce you to my favorite woman. This is Clara. A little embarrassed, he said. How long have you been asleep? The daughter asked in a businesslike manner. Rick choked, and Cindy gasped. Adriana, where did you get those words? What words, Grandma? I didn't say a single foul word. The girl asked innocently. She could have sworn her grandmother was laughing. However, Adriana was far more concerned about her father's reaction. When she looked at her parent, she tried to think of something serious to say, or she would have laughed out loud. The solid businessman blushed and gulped for air as he was thrown on the shore. But his blonde date didn't seem the least bit embarrassed. Rick, it's okay, she said with a smile. Adriana was just nervous. Really? Adriana nodded to the girl, thinking that Slaga wasn't as stupid as she seemed at first. I wonder why she stood up for me. Adriana wondered. I'll have something to think about tonight before I go to bed. The feast went on as usual. Clara went out of her way to charm Cindy. More chicken lezginka. In a secular tone, Grandma asked. No, thank you dazzlingly, smiled the guest. Everything is delicious, but I've had enough for today. I'm watching my figure. That's commendable, Cindy said approvingly. Perhaps a Greek soldier, then. I've read that salads and leaves are very beneficial in that respect. Well, go ahead, nodded Nancy. When she fell asleep, she puzzled over the question for a long time, but didn't come up with anything. It's elementary, Miranda exclaimed. She wants to be friends with you. She's sucking up to you, but we don't know what she has in mind. What were you praying for, Adriana? Molly was at the games and pretended to be nice too. And then Molly got sent to Switzerland. So what do we do now? Well, to fight with her now certainly do not need to, authoritatively stated Miranda. Especially since it was Clara who stood up for you. So, nothing. Let's see what happens next. If you communicate with her, you'll be aware of everything. You won't know what to prepare for. Okay, by who? Adriana, with respect. Looking at Miranda's classmate from 3rd grade, I dreamed of becoming a psychologist. And not just dreamed, but did everything to make her dream come true. She read smart books and from time to time looked for interesting materials on the internet, which was not used by everyone at that time. Adriana herself dreamed of doing business like her dad. She knew she would never become a glamour doll like this Nancy. Many of the girls in the class clumsily imitated such ladies. Certainly not Adriana. First of all, because she knew exactly what to imitate. It's not cool. Second, Adriana's glamorous style. As she once said, no way. And after getting acquainted with this Clara, Adriana is unlikely to have a desire to dress glamorously. Yes, even the word glamour annoyed her. No, she's going to be a businesswoman. That's the kind of look I'd like to see. It's not some harlot in furs and tracks, dreaming of getting a rich man. And the fact that Adriana was disgraced by money was not in doubt. But why doesn't Daddy notice it? Is love really evil? Well, if you understand, then go ahead. I believe in you. Miranda encouraged her. Don't worry, we'll get through this. Meanwhile, her father and grandmother were talking about Adriana. How do you like it? Rick asked his mother. Question. How long have we been asleep? Cindy just grinned. Oh, come on. Nothing terrible happened. Adriana's just jealous. She just said something like that without thinking. It was 5 minutes later, and no one remembered it. Or did they? I just wonder how you know so much about male-female relationships. Rick, please, laughed the mother. Or did you talk about poetry with your friends when you were her age? Well, no, of course not. Well, why? It's all the same. All right, calm down and take it easy. The fact that Rick called his mother during business hours was a big deal. It means he's really worried. Was he beginning to be able to show his feelings? Cindy thought. For better or worse. Mother, how do you like Clara? Rick asked. Well, she's very nice. Mother didn't answer right away. I don't hear confidence in her voice. Son, but it's your life, as long as you're sure of your feelings. You are sure? I am. All right then. I don't like that girl, Cindy said to her ex-wife. When Rick introduced me to Kathy, I thought that's the girl he'd be happy with, because he was. Too bad it didn't last. Oh, I'm sorry. It's okay. Lisa smiled sadly. With you, on the contrary, I got back after such grief, and I'm glad you're remembering. Kathy, with a kind word. So if she deserves it, and this one, God forgive me, some not natural, fake, not sincere. Well, it's Rick she's already got to live with, remarked the relative. Well, yes, we can only hope that the first impression will be deceptive. But for Adriana, my heart aches. I thought he was friendly with her. You can tell he's just sucking up, and it's not like he's just trying to please you out of the goodness of his heart. Cindy, I don't recognize you. Lisa smiled again. This time, it was cheerful and cheerful. What do we do? We're not going to let our granddaughter get hurt, but we won't. A month after that memorable dinner, Macduff made his beloved an official proposal. When Adriana heard about it, she was stunned. Why are you so rambling? Asked her grandmother Lisa after the dinner in honor of the engagement Rick Slara. It's understandable why, though. The girl is definitely not thrilled with her stepmother-to-be, and jealousy too. Is that what you think? With a strained smile replied the granddaughter. Poor girl, the older woman thought, and is worried, but doesn't want to show how scared she is. Maybe she could talk to Rick and take Adriana back to her house. After all, they would have a child someday. Maybe more than one. He won't have a daughter. Adriana was really scared. Unlike her grandmother, she didn't think that she might have a brother or sister. Glamorous ladies and children in Adriana's understanding combined about as well as cutlets with condensed milk. But her departure abroad seemed to be a done deal. Stunning and lovely. A femme fatale. You're a beauty. The chirping of their bridesmaids. It was unstoppable. They were broadcasting so loudly that Adriana got a headache, and the party was just beginning. A celebration for whom? As much as I disliked her. Adriana had to admit that Clara looked beautiful. She was expecting a bouffant dress with deep bow ties. But nothing like that. The bride's dress was sewn from beautifully glimmering belligerent material and resembled snow screaming in the sun. It was slightly sheer from the bottom and beautiful when walking. And thanks to the microscopic fur, Snow White and Bolero for the wedding outfit looked even richer and respectable. Her smooth hair was arranged in a deliberately careless, but very spectacular hairstyle. Makeup was made in warm colors and delicately Koralova. And the lipstick was much more than doll-like pink. Probably, Daddy gave a lot of money, thought Adriana, and immediately berated himself. What am I talking about? Not today, so tomorrow I will be sent to a foreign boarding school for unwanted children of the rich. And I'm talking about money. The guests were divided into my father's business partners and lying glamorous girlfriends, not counting the rare relatives on both sides. The latter were only a dozen or so. I wonder where her parents are, Adriana thought. I have no idea, shrugged Cindy's grandmother. Rick never talked about her parents. Is she an orphan or something? Probably. She answered indifferently. Adriana had realized almost immediately that her grandmother wasn't thrilled with her new daughter-in-law. And now she was 200% sure of it. But since she respected her son's choice, she preferred to keep quiet. But what would happen if she really had a new grandchild? After the registry office, everyone went to some wildly fancy country club. The team organized contests, offered the guests to participate in filming, singing, or dancing. I must say, the solid businessmen were happy to read poems, perform interesting numbers, and laugh like children relaxing after hard work. With respect, thought Adriana, wives of businessmen behave more restrained and even somehow prim. Dry wobblers in couture outfits, she giggled to herself. However, these ladies were more sympathetic to Adriana than Elysium, and the half-naked girlfriends, lying around with their eyes glittering like Christmas trees. The girls wasted no time. Every now and then they shot their eyes at the businessmen. Their spouses also did not lose vigilance. After a few numbers, the toastmaster announced a disco. Bridesmaids squealed with delight, jumped out to dance. It seemed that they were about to jump out of their already purely symbolic clothes. Adriana suddenly had a terrible need to pee, so she went in search of a public place. Ellen told the receptionist to go down the hall to the end and to the left. In front of the restroom, there was a sort of an anteroom that looked like a barbershop. There were a couple of chairs, some mirrors with sticks with plywood on them. What was that for? Adriana wondered. But remembering that this is a country club, suggested that perhaps vacationers come here to dry their hair after the pool. The anteroom was set up with pots and masons with flowers. Paradise. Thought with admiration of the stall where the folks did their natural needs, was separated by a partition of finished glass. If it were not for the inscription, "Dear visitors of the club, kindly request a flush after yourself," a man wandering in by accident would not have guessed that he had entered such a prosaic place as a toilet. Having done her business, Adriana hurriedly left the stall as she suddenly heard, "Lucky you closed, such a money muffin was enough to boring." With a sigh, said the new stepmother Adriana, feeling that she would hear something interesting. And so she froze. The lighter clicked, and soon the room was filled with the smell of tobacco with a dash of net flowers or fruit. What a problem to have someone funnier than a church friend. No, of course not. Nancy giggled. I mean, are you guys planning on having kids? Rick wants to, but I don't want to. Maybe in 3 years. But right now, no way. This is not the kind of poverty I've chosen to live in. I still want to live for myself, and preferably well. I think I deserve it. What can you say? Good for you. Parents, do you know you can't be home now? Crazy, exclaimed the new wife of the businessman. They're just embarrassing. Imagine if they showed up at the wedding and bought it. Yeah. How do you tell a man you don't want to have a baby? I can't. I'll just give in and take the pill. Adriana took a breath. At 12 years old, she was well informed. What pills are we talking about? The fact that she's not planning to have a baby yet is certainly good. But the fact that it's Kuklina deceiving the father is out of line. Although Adriana didn't expect anything else. Despite her young age, she was a remarkably perceptive girl and doubted the sincerity of Clara. And there you have it. Adriana's limbs were bleeding from sitting in the same position, but she was afraid to move. Then she should go straight to the Pantheon. The friends chatted about something else and left. Adriana took a deep breath and sat down in the chair. We've got to get her out of here, she thought. Her Macduff Harris was. Surely she would certainly do it. True, she didn't know how yet. But was that a problem? It's the desire that counts, and that's not counting her love for her father. At the end of the wedding party came out to throw her bouquet unmarried girl and her girlfriends as if mad. The ladies were totally unglamorous, panting, pushing each other away. One of them couldn't hold on to her high stilettos and fell, They must be itching to get married, and preferably as well as Clara. She remembered her stepmother's conversation with her friend and frowned. So she had parents after all. She was ashamed of them. Adriana remembered Slag's words. She was crazy to be ashamed of them. Imagine, they'd show up at the wedding, and then they'd be stubborn. Her stepmother, the daughter of alcoholics, came out. Adriana shook her head. Her thoughts were interrupted by a shriek. A happy man had caught the bride's bouquet. Here, with the throwing of the bandage, friends, the groom came out of tab. Single men present at the wedding banquet is not in a hurry to bind themselves to the bonds of Hymenaeus. Can you imagine? It is Mops, white-haired, cheating daddy, Adriana said indignantly. She and Miranda sat in a cafe and read delicious ice cream, and Adriana was telling her friend about her father's wedding. The friend gave her a second serving of cold dessert, but Adriana, from indignation, could not taste the flavor and could not appreciate it. She is taking pills so she won't get pregnant and tell daddy she wants a baby. Can you believe I want to expose her? I just don't know how to find out where she keeps those pills and visit Uncle Rick. Miranda shrugged. Ah well, yeah, I guess so, pondered Adriana. She began to watch her stepmother and eventually found out that she carried the pills in her purse. It was that simple. Well, look out for the creature, the girl exulted. Now the main thing is to find the right moment, and he did not wait long. Cindy's anniversary was, as always, heartwarming. Unless, of course, you count Clara's sour face, her grumbling about the overly colorful dishes, as if she wasn't the one who had eaten almost half of the cake the day before. I guess Grandma's delicious cakes and salads aren't too glamorous for our Slaga. With a chuckle, Adriana thought with gusto, flying away salty in a tube, stuffed with ham and cheese and herbs. That evening, when they arrived home, Adriana dropped her stepmother's purse, which she had set on the floor as if unintentionally. It couldn't have been a better place. You can't be more careful, Clara whispered hatefully, looking at her stepdaughter. You bet, because the package of contraceptives fell out of her purse right at her husband's feet. I didn't do it on purpose, Adriana exclaimed indignantly, picking up the pills. She found a place to put them. Indeed, remarked Rick. And then he asked Clara, "Are you sick?" Rick repeated, and there was a hint of concern in his voice, just a slight hint of sleep. I knew that my father had a volcano in his soul. It had something to do with us not working out. And I think, in the most direct and mysterious way, Adriana said in a mysterious voice, handing the pills to my father. Clara, you're the measure of a stepdaughter, with your annihilating gaze. I explained everything. Of course you did, nodded Macduff. And I could hear the threat in his voice. Oh my God, really? Adriana thought happily. However, she was disappointed in the morning. At breakfast, her stepmother and father looked like lovebirds, not the slightest hint that he was going to put out that armful. And what would that mean? Puzzled thought Adriana. So far, the darling has labeled it directly. Clara kissed her spouse on the lips. When Rick and his daughter had breakfast, they went to the car. Daddy, do you think I'm little and don't understand anything? After a little thought, Adriana decided. No, I'm not, assured her father, pulling out of the yard. Then I have a question. I'm listening, as usual, she said discreetly. Dad, have you forgiven her? I have nothing to forgive her for. What do you mean? Nothing. And the pills? What about the pills? Macduff shrugged. Clara explained it all to me. Aha. And what did she explain to you then? Adriana, what kind of interrogation is this? Clara and I are two adults who can work things out between ourselves. I'm just curious. I'm a woman-to-be, after all. At least I'll know what kind of noodles to tell him. Adriana smiled slightly. But why noodles? If you're so mature, I'll explain on my fingers. The doctor advised Clara to take the pills and then stop. It's kind of like if you stop, it comes on. The result of my father's embarrassment was a little amusing. Adriana. No, he's not so dishonest. thought the daughter with satisfaction. What's so strange about it, though? It's not like he's a robot. There's a limit to everything. That would be all right. But the explanation that Clara gave her father, I'm not convinced. Adriana is obviously lying. Miranda declared unequivocally, when the friends joined together in a secluded corner during recess. If that were true, your dad would know about it. Except it didn't work out. Adriana said sadly. It wasn't evening yet. On the way home from school, Adriana often visited her grandmother, or rather, grandmothers, because Grandma Lisa spent most of her free time at Cindy's. That's just how it is. Unfortunately, saints often dislike each other. But that had nothing to do with Adriana's grandmothers. Cindy had once loved Kathy like family and had become firm friends with her mother. Their husbands, Christopher, although they were great friends, Cindy and Lisa were good friends. Adriana adored both grandmothers and was proud of their friendship. My grandmothers are the best. With pride, she thought. Adriana opened the door with her key and smiled. They are. The grandmothers briefly into your singing again. It's the Lovelies with tenderness in her voice, said hello Grandma Lisa, thinking how much her granddaughter was becoming like Kathy. And as she grew older, the resemblance only grew stronger. The same piercing blue eyes and unruly golden blonde hair that Adriana used to wear in a ponytail. Her late mother had favored an elegant one. Hello, Dragonfly, Kathy, Cindy repeated. Why are you puffed up? Like a mouse on grits. Did you get an F? Well, I'd rather have gotten a D, said her granddaughter sullenly. What is it? Asked grandmother, guessing that the stepmother again did not please her something, and thought it seems that in fairy tales stepmother-stepdaughter, and indeed something is something. But jokes are jokes, but the girl is suffering. Is it that my dad seems to have gone blind, or has love made him a little dull? Adriana answered and told the story of the pills. But maybe Clara told the truth. Grandma, you even splashed her granddaughter's hands. Frankly speaking, Cindy herself did not believe it. However, the old woman thought it was wrong to show it to her granddaughter. Otherwise, she would be turning the girl against her stepmother, and against her father as well. Cindy could not help guessing that Adriana understood how she felt about her daughter-in-law, but she should behave like a wise grandmother. It hurts me that this white-haired bitch is deceiving Daddy. Adriana, but you don't know anything. Lisa must have quietly remarked. Why not? I don't know. Yes, I do. Adriana smiled mysteriously. So it turns out that Clara is not an orphan. Cindy said thoughtfully, when her granddaughter told her about the conversation overheard in the country club restroom. It turns out, nodded Adriana. She said she was an orphan. Yeah, she didn't say anything at all, Grandma recalled. But you know what I'll tell you. Adriana, honey, don't get involved in their relationship. It won't end well. Let them try to send me to boarding school. What boarding house have I interrupted you in the meantime? Cindy animated with surprise. I know which one. A foreign one. To Switzerland or to England, father that was going to send you abroad. The older woman wondered, thinking that Adriana was right when she said that love made Rick's mind tight. He didn't tell me anything. Having said that, Cindy smiled to herself. Rick had been consulting his mother a lot lately, and she liked that a lot. Yeah, but what's the story with the boarding house? What do you have to do with Dad? Adriana waved it off with annoyance. It's just that Miranda was telling me how the stepmother treated Vika from the cottage next door. Molly, what cottage was she talking about? Completely confused grandmother. Which is next door to my friend Miranda's parents, launched into a girl's explanation. Oh my God. Cindy laughed with relief. I thought you'd listen to your girlfriends. They'll say other things. Do you really think Lisa and I would let you down? Well, you will, Tanya. Tanya nodded with a smile. As for Papa and Clark, life will put everything in its place. How long will it take? Grandma continued her lecture, and gently, pressing the tip of her nose, Adriana asked with a smile. The granddaughter nodded. Well, super, summarized Cindy. Then girls, let's have lunch. I don't know about you, but I'm starving. "Lisa, what are we having for lunch today?" "Borscht," Lisa said proudly, "and mashed potatoes with the pour when it's all done. It is known, when while you were at the clinic, you got sick," worried Adriana, unwittingly remembering how her father asked the fox about it. What a bastard, with hatred thought she stepmother. No, she shook her head with a smile. Cindy, just prophylactic. And noticing the incredulous look on her granddaughter's face, she laughed. "But honestly, it's all good. Discussions on the ethics and psychology of family life, I declare closed. Better tell me, what would you like to get as a birthday present?" Immersed in the experience, Adriana completely forgot that in a week's time her birthday is 13 years. A bloody dozen, which, by the way, became Adriana's lucky day. The birth of the only daughter of a Macduff businessman was decided to celebrate in a small family circle. Grandmother Cindy presented her granddaughter with a cute and bright blue pants, and Grandmother Lisa presented her granddaughter with a youthful toilet water with a marvelous food aroma. "And this from me," and Clara trembled, in a voice pronounced Rick, and Adriana, not without surprise, realized that the father worried. He held out a box to his daughter, seeing that it showed a cell phone. Adriana squealed with delight. "It was for me." She threw herself around her father's neck. "Well, who else?" Rick grinned, awkwardly, hugging the birthday girl. "Dad and I wish you happiness," in a secular tone, said Clara, stretching her brightly painted mouth almost to her ears. It was as if that pill scene had never happened. True, Adriana's thoughts at the Meckel convention couldn't hold back, limiting herself to words of gratitude. "Wow, what a cool phone with a color display. That's great." And this was Adriana's first cell phone. Some students already went to school with cell phones, but where were their tadpoles from giving nasty TV Kanye and her phones? Adriana's delight was unbounded. "Got the recorder," she said, looking at the options. "What are the tunes on there?" "So Moonlit Haze." "Adriana, baby, come sit with us," Cindy asked with a smile. "More on any chassis." Come on, don't argue." It was undoubtedly one of Adriana's best birthdays, but she had no idea that fate had another pleasant surprise in store for her. Adriana had fallen in love with the number 13. One night, a couple months after her stepdaughter's birthday, she announced that she was pregnant. "Are you sure?" asked Rick. "I'm sure. And I thought you were excited." "I am." No, I'm really glad." Adriana sat next to me and pretended to watch TV. She wondered if Clara was pregnant. She was already convinced that her stepmother would lie. She'd take it cheap. But how could she know? Adriana thought, and finally came to the conclusion that there would be food. And Clara read when I will be discharged from the maternity hospital, and we will be photographed. Me, you, and our baby. I also want balloons, lots of flowers, a limo, photo shoots. Clara, did you confuse the discharge from the hospital with the wedding? Rick grinned. No, now everyone does that. And what do you say? Adriana didn't even immediately realize that her stepmother was addressing her. When she did, she shrugged. What am I supposed to say? The only thing I could say is that Clara does not need a child, but flowers, balloons. Oh, and a limo. What's a limo without a limo? Unless, of course, the stepmother really is pregnant. So you will have a brother or sister, said Slaga in a tone as if it was about the whole area of my life. When I will, then I will tell you, said the stepdaughter, and went to her room. But things, thought Adriana. What if she really is pregnant? I'll go to my grandmother's to sew. Except which one? She decided she would think about it tomorrow. And strangely enough, fell asleep instantly. Adriana didn't recognize her father. Mr. Macduff still maintained his trademark poker face. However, there was a change in his behavior. He gave Clara a gift every day. Modest, but very nice gifts, bouquets of baskets of flowers. Carefully thought out daily menu mused his wives, feet of feet, and as an exemplary future daddy uncomplainingly forgave her caprices and mood swings. Was it like that with Mom too? I asked his grandmother. Well, Pretty much, yes, Cindy nodded. The only difference is that then my father did not have extra money for flowers and knickknacks. Grandma is glad that you will have another grandson or granddaughter. Well, how could a grandmother not be glad about that? In fact, the elderly woman is a little bit crooked. She would certainly be happy to nurse another grandson, but something prevented her from rejoicing fully. And then Cindy realized that she was the one who had doubts that her daughter-in-law was really pregnant. Rick's mother herself didn't understand where she was getting that doubt from. But there it was. Maybe I'm paranoid. The older woman thought with a chuckle and immediately dismissed the thought. No, it didn't look like that. And meanwhile, Clara was twisting Macduff as she wished. When she said she was cold, her husband carefully covered her with a plaid. When Slaga was hot, Rick uncomplainingly turned on the air conditioner. In addition, Rick had a professional video camera for the discharge from the maternity hospital. That's the way to become a jack of all trades, thought Adriana, looking at this, shall we say, family TV. The Macduff couple was sitting on the couch. They were watching TV. Beside them stood a palla of strawberries and cherries with whipped cream and a saucer with 2 small cakes. Adriana settled back in her chair in anticipation of another play. Love, I suppose. I want some water with lemon. Capriciously, the stepmother said. Rick just sighed and went to the kitchen, and when he came back with a glass of water, with either racer floating in it, Slara said thank you. I don't want any more. Macduff sat down on the couch and put his arm around his wife. Rick, you know what I thought. I'm all smiles. I need some positive vibes right now. It's so encouraging. Nodded Rick. It's not like you want to go to a resort. Adriana grinned to herself. And I want to quit, said Clara. But old girl, you disappoint me, don't you? Quit? Macduff interjected. Aha. Disarming, smiled his wife, pressing herself against his shoulder. I want to prepare for motherhood in a quiet environment to visit museums, exhibitions, and just walk in the fresh air. But I think we can afford it, nodded Rick. Thank you, beloved, that's all. Well, to be honest, there's more, Clara said shyly. Would you like to go somewhere? Still, I underestimated you. A trip, repeated the husband thoughtfully. Yes, of course, with my favorite man, but you know I don't have time. Well, I was so hopeful. Disappointed, said Clara. What can you do? With sincere regret, said Rick. The only thing I can offer you is to go alone. Why not? You'll have a rest to unwind and prepare, so to speak, morally for the birth of the baby. Where would you like to go? Well, let's just say Egypt. Okay, and Egypt. So Egypt, I'll arrange it. Clara shone like a copper penny in the sun and smacked him on the cheek and said, I have the best husband in the world. I tried to jokingly with a bow, replied Rick, and added, and I have a wife. You are so beautiful. At this point, the father reminded of his son John, who not so long ago began to hit on her, then a chocolate bar, then texts. And the other day John panted awkwardly, told Adriana that he liked her and invited her to the movies. Adriana promised to think about it. I guess I'm the kind of woman who's good during pregnancy. Nancy, what does pregnancy have to do with it? You're as beautiful as ever. You've got a lot of nerve. Adriana thought indignantly, is it okay to have a baby? She said a deep good night and retired to the bedroom. Let it all roll on. And you know, I think I'll have a drink of water. Adriana heard and grinned. After Clara quit her job, she was always missing somewhere. Although why is it known? Were the store, beauty salons, sitting in cafes, in the company of the same glamorous ladies. In general, a full set of pleasures, the young wife of a businessman. Macduff was very reverent towards his pregnant wife. It is understandable, because the life of the first wife was cut short at the moment of childbirth. Clara, have you been to the doctor? Rick asked. Yes, of course. And how's our baby? He's fine. What about the trip to Egypt? Oh, I forgot. Here you go. He slaps himself on the forehead, and he's cool. I'm going to Egypt. I'm in. Adriana, having learned that her stepmother was going to a resort, sighed with relief at least 10 days off from her. But fate had something more interesting in store for the Macduff Harris. But even for this stupid report in despair, said Adriana in despair for the 10th time search in the school backpack. The social studies report was a matter of life and death. People from the education department would be present at the defense of the report, which she had been preparing for 3 whole months. Are you sure you put it in the backpack? Miranda asked. Yes, I did. Adriana said, annoyed. Although she suddenly remembered how she had already unzipped her backpack in the hallway and intended to put the report in it, but decided to educate herself. Adriana burned herself and left the apartment, and the report remained lying on the shelf. What? Nothing, and did not put it home. Nervously, she said. Asking Betty to leave shrugged Miranda's shoulders. Well, what else is there to do? Yes, the defense would make it in time. Their class teacher was not a bad woman. She was as accommodating as the situation allowed, so it wasn't going to be a problem. And so it was. Betty gave the okay, and Adriana ran to the bus stop. As she opened the door, she heard her stepmother's voice, getting ready to deliver the baby. And I mean it, she has no idea. Adriana, not thinking long, turned on the recorders, stood at the entrance to the kitchen, from where not only came the voice of Clara, but also smelled like of a tobacco. The stepmother fell silent, and Adriana grimaced. Pisanka, sweetie, say something else, say something. She mentally begged her spouse and father, forgetting about the report. What the hell does a report when a viper has penetrated their family? Well, I'm going to Egypt to have a blast, and then I have a miscarriage. Well, the hospital's got it covered. It'll give Kevin a chance to prove his love. Because, yeah, they're all assholes. But that's good for us, right? Giggled the sneaky Clara. After the miscarriages, did you beg him for a trip to Thailand? No, Paris. Adriana decided that was enough. God forbid, she would go out into the hallway and warm the candlestick standing by the mirror in the hallway. As if in a dream, she took the report from the shelf and left the apartment unnoticed. Adriana did not remember defending the report. She had said something, answered some questions, and came to her senses when the social studies teacher Joe said approvingly, "Well done, Macduff." Adriana walked out of the classroom and sank into a chair. Her classmates looked around, hesitant to come in. Finally, John Michelson, apparently, decided that he could not breathe before his death, crossed himself and said, "God be with you," and disappeared into the study. "What's the matter with you?" asked Miranda, looking intently at her friend. "You're not well, Miranda, then," Adriana said tiredly. She didn't remember how long she had been staring at the same spot. When she came to her senses, she had already defended her report, but she had calmed down a little. Adriana nodded and said, "Let's go." "That's the bomb," Miranda exclaimed when she heard the recorder and the tape. "And when you're going to blow it up?" "I'm going to blow it up right now," Adriana said firmly. "Rick is busy," said the secretary. But the girl didn't seem to hear her. Adriana burst into the office and said from the doorstep, "Dad, I need to talk to you. It's very important." The secretary from Rick entered the office. I tried to stop her, but she, Olga, "Everything is fine," soothed her Macduff, and the girl, with a sigh of relief, left the office. "What such an important business brought you to my work?" good-naturedly asked the father. Instead of answering, Adriana turned on the dictaphone. "Why, shall I go to Egypt? I'm going to have a great time there. And then I'll have a miscarriage." I heard Macduff. The young wife's voice got darker, but the hospital's got it covered. At the same time, we give Kevin a chance to prove his love. Otherwise, yes, they're all asses. Turn it off. Rick cut him off. "Adriana, I hope you're not doing that right now." She didn't have time to finish. Bolotov took the phone and gestured for his daughter to be quiet. The girl obediently nodded. Now Adriana was sure that she had achieved her goal and felt good and calm. "Are you close to home?" asked Rick, after which he told his wife they needed to talk. "Let's go, shall we?" He turned to his daughter. "Let's go. You wanted to talk to me," Nancy asked with a smile. She was wearing a revealing dress, dark red in color, lipstick to match the dress, carelessly curls almost to her waist. What can I say? Good looking. But it didn't matter now. Yes, I did. "But first, you have to show me all the papers that prove you're pregnant." "But they're at the hospital, and Nancy's flying around scared." "Well, let's say I call the hospital you're seeing." "But why?" "Really, no reason," agreed Adriana. "Be a friend. Turn on the tape." "It's not like that." "That's not what I meant to say at all. We were joking, and shut up." Macduff said softly but sternly, "Here's your 15 minutes to pack. Time's up. Or maybe I'm a jackass, but I'm not going to let myself be fooled." Rick's favorite faux pas, exclaimed the sneaky piss shamefully, and explained everything to Clara, not testing my patience. Macduff was adamant for 14 minutes. "But Adriana, it's just you know it." "I know. I was an idiot, but luckily it's not too late to fix it. Take all the jewelry." "We don't need Adriana." "And get the hell out of here in 13 minutes. Surprisingly, from that day on, the father-daughter relationship changed dramatically. They had many conversations about everything. Macduff seemed to rediscover this surprisingly wise girl, his daughter. He had to have figured out the fox. From time to time, Rick wondered if he regretted it, and suddenly realized that he didn't. "I guess I didn't love her," Macduff once told his mother. "Of course you didn't love her," he hummed, "but mother, that's a different name for it. Even a detained man like you is no stranger to passion, which fortunately passes." "Fortunately," Rick interjected, looking thoughtfully at his mother. "In this case, certainly. Maybe. But what the hell with her? I have wonderful parents, a beautiful daughter, a job I love. I happen to be a lucky man. Robert, what do you want to be?" Rick asked me once. "I want to be in business." Without hesitation, answered the daughter. "What about you? How's that?" Unexpected. Frankly speaking, he always thought that business is a man's business, and a woman should be engaged exclusively in women's affairs, choosing business. A woman, in his opinion, loses her femininity. Solid, successful business lady looks great, visits beauty salons, dresses expensively. However, the real woman was in her. At least kill me did not see. But now, looking at this girl, she looked remarkably like his late wife. Rick thought she'd make a great business lady. What about femininity? How do I know what they're like at home with family and friends? I've been dreaming about it since elementary school, Adriana admitted. Well, welcome to the world of business. When the Macduff Harris went into her senior year, she recalled with a laugh how she was afraid that her father, with a pitch from the right, was expecting her to go abroad. Now studying outside her native country didn't seem like something terrible to her. Moreover, she firmly knew that she wanted to study at the London School of Economics and Political Science. Why? Sounds solid, Dad remarked. Because it's one of Britain's leading centers for business development and entrepreneurship. There's a Department of Economics, Finance, Management Law, and International Relations. Wow, but it's not bullshit, nodded Rick. So what did you choose? I chose economics. Where without it? Especially since it includes the rest of the above. And there are electives too. Adriana's enthusiasm energized her father. The grandmothers, of course, wooed and awed that the only granddaughter was going to study so far away. But the girl only laughed. Grandma Lisa, Grandma Cindy. First of all, I haven't gotten in yet. And second of all, in the age of the internet, is that a problem? But both grandfathers were looking at their granddaughter. With respect. But for what? Ivan Petrovich remarked. We didn't have such opportunities. So Adriana will learn, and at the same time she will look at the world. And then, look, and a foreign groom will find good-naturedly, laughed Fyodor. Well, why not? Flirtatiously smiled granddaughter. By the way, there are students from different countries, so I'll become some kind of Blue Vanessa or Mrs. Everyone laughed. The attempt to get an education abroad was successful, and Adriana flew to London. 10 years later, Adriana, the Germans have arrived, reported to the secretary. Thank you. Seeing them off after the meeting with the Germans and the upcoming business negotiations in a restaurant. And then she had to work in the office. All in all, free time was worth its weight in gold, but Adriana Macduff, and all that was madly enjoying it. 5 years ago, she graduated from the London School of Economics and Political Science. And a year ago, Rick, convinced that his daughter perfectly coped with the duties of the head of the firm, stepped away from the business. He married a good woman whose name was Galena. And soon after the marriage, the newlyweds moved to the country house Macduff. Sam Morrison, with whom he started the business together, had long ago sold Macduff his share and left for Miami. So now Adriana was at the helm of a powerful mechanism, and she did it well. Mom, as well as grandparents, who also passed away, were proud of her. The personal life of one of the successful business ladies was shrouded in mystery, and therefore about Adriana Macduff, and judged a hell of a lot. One, inexplicably from where they took that, most likely she was abandoned by a certain English lord. Allegedly, that's why Adriana returned to Russia as a beaten dog. Others were convinced of her unconventional orientation, and these others knew that an employee of the prosecutor's office was pining for the spectacular business lady. By the way, the employee had indeed been a player on Adriana since high school, and he was none other than classmate John Michelson. But what did orientation have to do with it? That's what she never realized. Because if everyone who doesn't reciprocate is suspected of being LGBT, the world will go crazy. And soon Adriana Macduff met her future husband. What did she do to stir up the business community? It happened at the presentation of a new perfume, and a wildly fashionable young fashion designer already. May I invite you? She heard a pleasant baritone somewhere above her. Raising her eyes, Adriana saw a handsome, brutal blonde man who obviously did not neglect the gym. Why not? After a slow dance, Stephen, as Playboy's name was, suggested a drink, and then he asked Adriana if we should get out of here. The young woman looked at Stephen in amazement. But no, if you find my suggestion too impertinent, you know, it doesn't. Adriana smiled enigmatically. Really? Of course it does, because it is. I'm sorry. I guess we misunderstood each other, Stephen said. Apparently so. She nodded and took pity on her unexpected suitor. I like your proposal very much. So what are we waiting for? Still, Stephen stopped by a restaurant that works until the last customer. They ordered a bunch of food and 2 bottles of red wine. The bartender and the waiter threw now and then in their direction, suffering looks, but they were in no hurry to leave. I had never had such a good and easy time with any man Adriana had ever been with. True, there weren't that many men, but still, her first man was the son of a Parisian businessman named Pierre. Could Frogman learned from them French phrases, on which they, in fact, and mocked. And a month later, the young people parted. Zanuds was not to her taste. With her second lover, Adriana met during a walk in the national park. George worked in a small construction company, loved sports, and had a great sense of humor. The couple dated for 2 years, but in the end it didn't work out. Then there were some other hobbies, which were limited to innocent flirting. Of course, there was also John Michelson, who had loved Estonia since 8th grade. But he was so good that Adriana felt she had no right to give him hope. Let him already find someone who will love him and make him happy. Adriana recalled how she had returned from London. John had arrived at her door with a bouquet of roses. Tall, handsome, dressed to perfection. He smelled of expensive perfume. And his career, as far as she knew, was on the upswing. What a way for a girl to look, Adriana thought. I don't need other girls. I only want you. I'm willing to wait for you as long as it takes. And John waited. And for good reason. Adriana came home at midnight. intoxicated not so much by the wine as by Stephen's charm, and happy beyond belief, but not bothering to take off her makeup and wash it off. She poked her under the covers and fell asleep with a blissful smile. Stephen Adriana's relationship was progressing rapidly. She felt she had met her man, but he was slippery, said Miranda, with whom Adriana was still friends. Well, I don't like him, that's all. I feel like there's something wrong with him that I'm surprised to hear, Adriana exclaimed. Stephen is cool. When you get to know him better, you'll change your mind about him. I don't think you even know what he does. Of course I do. He has a business in another city. What kind of business? A real estate agency. And you know what kind of agency? Did Miranda keep up? What kind of interrogation is this? Adriana wrinkled his nose. He said the name I don't remember. And you didn't even ask around. Adriana shook her head. I remember when your papa hen married Clara, you said that love had robbed him of his ability to think. Well, I can say the same thing about you. I don't like him. Well, the important thing is that I like him, giggled the business lady in love, and added seriously, Miranda, you are a wonderful psychologist, but you are wrong about Stephen. He's a good man, and I'm comfortable with him. I would pay attention to John if I were you, but you are not in my place. Adriana argued reasonably. Then everything will be fine. Miranda wasn't so sure about that either. Her father wasn't thrilled about his daughter's suitors either, but he said it was your life. I won't interfere, but remember, if you need any help, I'll always help you in any way I can. Thanks, Dad. Adriana hugged her father. A month later, Stephen proposed to Adriana, and she said yes. Aren't you in too much of a hurry? Miranda expressed her doubts. I beg you, she said with a smile. If I realize that I've met the one I want to spend the rest of my life with, then why wait? People date for years and then get divorced. So why wait? My friend thought about it. As a psychologist, she realized that in the words of her friend had common sense. Indeed, why wait? They are not students who have no money or housing, but something that did not believe in real estate agency or extraterrestrial love at first sight. After all, Adriana is a grown woman and knows what she's doing, Miranda thought. After a lavish wedding, the newlyweds flew to Spain. Honeymoon to the rhythms of flamenco, so titled Estonia album, with photos of the vacation in social network. After seeing these photos, John Michelson got so drunk that he came to himself for 2 days. Thankfully, it was a weekend. Having returned from Spain, Adriana began to look at the house. She had long dreamed of it, but she had no time to deal with the issue. Jen, you are my realtor. With a smile, said Adriana, cozily, nestled on her husband's lap. Maybe in your office there are suitable options. So this summer, all solvent buyers at the resorts during the waiting for the baby. That's true. But you do realize. What if I recognize it? Finally found the right one online today. It was a lovely mansion with a large modern bathhouse, a meshless barbecue area, and an above-ground garage. The house was close to a forest area. This was a nice bonus for Adriana. We'll walk in the woods, pick berries and mushrooms, the young woman thought dreamily. Do you like it? She asked her husband. It's all right, nodded Stephen. Let's take it. Why not? The couple worked hard, but despite this, they'd managed to make time for socializing. In the evenings, they walked in the woods and tried to find the first mushrooms of August. There are no mushrooms there, good-naturedly said an elderly neighbor, a retired general, as well as berries used to grow, and now everything. No more. I see. Well, then we will walk in the forest, enjoying nature and breathing fresh air. Your newlyweds, the ex-military man winked cheerfully. Is it noticeable? Noticeable, nodded the neighbor. Older spouses don't usually hold hands. But God grant you many years of happiness. Thank you. The spouses replied with glee, laughing merrily. They ran into that one. I'll take a bath, said Stephen, gladly throwing off his dusty sandals. Shall we take it together? Adriana smiled meaningfully. Great idea, he smiled back. Then his cell phone rang. Looking at the display, Stephen pulled away from his wife and sat down in the wicker rocking chair, pressed the answer button. I missed you. I want to see you right now. The pestilence heard a woman's voice. I'll come all right. Suddenly, a hoarse voice answered Stephen, and turning off the 6, he said, I have to leave urgently for work. Well, you have to. Then you have to. She threw up her hands. I'm tired of waiting, pouted her lips. The young girl shook her luxurious golden red locks. Margot, for God's sake. Stephen laughed. We're Adriana, and we've only been married 2 months. Do you really think that in that time you can accumulate a lot of property together? I don't think anything. Vanessa said capriciously, I just want to be with you. I really want to be with you too, sincerely said. Well, you're a smart girl. You realize that things don't get done that fast. Unless you want to make a really big score, not some little thing. Come on, sweetie, I gotta go. Oh, that's too bad. Auntie's coming over soon. We could have had tea. My doll, but you remember I'm a family man. Yeah, you'll forget that. Well, be patient. You're a clever girl. And hello to the aunt. Hello, darling, greeted Freud, a slender blonde in an expensive summer suit of delicate coral blossom. Hello, the girl smiled sadly. Stephen was, asked the aunt, nodding at the bouquet of tea roses. He said hello to you. Vanessa replied with a sigh. He doesn't want a divorce. The woman sighed understandingly. Not that he doesn't want to, but he says it's too soon. His wife hasn't given him the right to act on her behalf or anything else. But then divorce is really out of the question, the aunt said. All that remains is to wait. Wife, at least you're pretty. Instead of answering, Vanessa entered social networks, showed a photo of the beloved with a wife pretty, but nothing special. Threw in a loving auntie. You're much prettier. Who does she remind me of? Maybe the owner of a hardware store and a repair store. Adriana Macduff. So now she's a Smith. Macduff is slowly being reinterpreted by a relative. Did you two know each other? I was married to her father. After her divorce from Rick Macduff, she couldn't find work for a long time. Eventually, she got a job as a waitress, but it didn't last long. One day, the beautiful blonde was noticed by one of the visitors and took her as a kept woman. He rented her an apartment, fed her, dressed her, and one day informed her that he had found another. You have the apartment at your disposal for a month. And then, sorry, Slaga promptly found another sponsor who put her in his luxurious dacha. Slaga lived there until one neighbor did not see a blonde staircase and reported it to his wife. And there was nowhere to go. So she left for her native village. Living with alcoholic parents is not very healthy, so she went back to the city. She worked as a maid, and for the first month she was allowed to live in a service room. And then luck smiled on Clara in the person of an old rich man from a neighboring vegetable garden. The old man was terminally ill, and after his death left Slaga an excellent 2-room apartment, a substantial sum of money and some jewelry. Relatives of the deceased tried to resent, but could do nothing. Everything was according to the law, so they just had to accept it. A year ago, a niece, Vanessa, came to stay with him. The girl, like her aunt, wanted money and a beautiful life, but did not like to work. From time to time, they got acquainted with wealthy men, but lately they got only amateurs. Have a good time and gift the beautiful ladies with a certain amount of money. Well, it's still bread. And here is such luck. Clara smiled. It seems that she had the opportunity to kill 2 birds at once to take revenge on not demolished girls, and at the same time, and attach her nephew. Clara knew about her affair with Stephen, who rented the apartment across the street and was privy to all the details. The only thing she didn't know was who his wife was with. What had she found out now? Margosha, it would not be possible to invite Stephen for tea. Let's say tomorrow, with a haunted smile, inquired Stephen. I think I might be able to help you, shall we say, speed things up. Two heads are certainly well better than one. And that's just fine. You see, my dear, I have my own scores to settle with this lady. Miranda loved her work as fondly as she loved her husband and 2-year-old daughter. She did not stay long on maternity leave, and when the baby was 1 year old, hired a nanny and went to work. The services of a psychologist from the center where Miranda worked were not cheap, so the salary was high. The staff was great, too. And the only thing Miranda didn't like was the hysterical rich ladies who obviously had nowhere to put their money. God, what an idiot, she thought as she saw off another well-dressed and hysterical person. Miranda grew up in a well-to-do family, and it was hard to imagine that her mother, the wife of a commercial director of a joint stock company, went to psychologists and complained about Krivoruchko, their plastic surgeons, or lack of attention from her husband. And now in front of her sat a pretty slender brunette in a leather habitual suit, hung with gold and diamonds, like a Christmas tree. "Well, what's wrong with me?" asked the woman, looking at Miranda, as if the patient's entire future life depended on her. The lady's lover was 15 years younger than her, but assured her that age was no obstacle to feelings. And further, Banal Cavalier turned out to be a banal Alfonso marriage swindler. Dark-haired lady was so naive that she gave her lover passwords from bank accounts, which he took advantage of. My God, and how do all these ladies do business? Miranda thought with bewilderment, and remembering her friend, decided that love, unfortunately, not only opens, but also. You see, your lover actually did not do that to you, but to another rich one. Let's call things by their proper names. There's nothing personal about the victim. The client took a deep breath and suddenly said, "Would you like to see how handsome he is?" Miranda did not have the slightest desire to look at some Alphonse swindler, but it couldn't be helped. Such intimate conversations were part of her job, and often the outcome of the conversation depended on it. "Well, let's have a look." Miranda smiled, and when she saw the photo, she miraculously didn't fall off the table. Her friend's husband was looking at her. After seeing off the visitor, Miranda immediately dialed the number of her friend Adriana. "Your husband is not who he says he is, Miranda." "What nonsense," Adriana said tiredly. "Tell me he's a foreign spy." "What? What did you hear?" "You're just jealous that Jenka and I have such a beautiful relationship, and you and him are just like normal people." "Really? What's going on here?" "That's what my friend said to Adriana. I won't let anyone speak ill of my husband, including you. I don't think we have anything else to talk about." "Yeah, Adriana. Look." But Adriana's already passed out. Miranda leaned back in her chair in despair. She took no offense. Adriana. Fear for her friend was much stronger than resentment. Well, what to do now? Feverishly she thought. Miranda, how to help her. Suddenly, she realized who could help her. Meanwhile, Adriana's husband, her former stepmother, and her niece were devising a plan. "Do you like turnips? On soap operas in the car?" "Yes, I love Vanessa very much and I want to be with her." Looking into her eyes, Stephen replied. "But what you're suggesting, no, I don't work out of the blue. No, girls much more effective and most importantly safer to divorce and pull half of the jointly acquired property." "So the mansion was purchased during the marriage, right?" Vanessa pointed out. "Married. But Adriana said she wanted me to act on her behalf." The aunt exclaimed beautifully. "She mentioned it. Remind her." And then Clara was eloquently silent. And then Adriana continued. "After all, she may not agree to a divorce or leave you with a nose. We women are like that." And Adriana left. "No man, no problem." "Well, that's true, too," Stephen replied after some thought. "There you go." "Well, suppose I agree," he said, and felt it necessary to add, "suppose." "Well, how do you do it? All you men need to be taught." "Quite," said Clara, realizing that the potential son-in-law, by and large matured, organize a favorite something like a second wedding trip, and somewhere in the mountains or a body of water, and abstract everything like an accident. Stephen drove home and pondered everything. His story was as simple as 3 chords. graduated from technical school with a job, and due to lack of experience, complete flop. Stephen Smith had been scraping by on odd jobs. And one day, when he was loading goods in the store and came to get his legal $10, the owner exclaimed that he was so handsome and moonlighting as a baggage handler. The guy spitefully looked at the spectacular and not yet old woman and mumbled, "So offer something else." And she did. Stephen went home $100 richer. And then there were other rich women. And when he first saw his neighbor Vanessa, he was attracted to her and only later realized that he had fallen in love at first sight. For the sake of this girl, Stephen was ready to give up his business. But what could the beloved offer, except housing? Stephen saw more than once how men of various ages came to the entrance, and the aunt and niece left with them. But despite that, his feelings for Vanessa never went away. "You're good." When Stephen first spoke to Vanessa, he thought she was very unhappy. "We're both unhappy," Stephen thought, and decided to break the cycle by all means. That's when he got the idea to find a rich bride, marry and claim half of the supposedly jointly acquired property, which he did with Betty, the same lady who cried into Miranda's vest. Unfortunately, her lawyer turned out to be a real professional, and Betty got off with a small sum, at least for her. "There's bad luck for old women," Stephen said, and went in search of a new cash cow. The ticket to the presentation was lucky, because there he met Mrs. Macduff, handsome, wealthy. In addition, unlike his previous ladies and the same age as the young one, fell in love with Smith as a schoolgirl, so without hesitation went with him to the wedding. Surprisingly, when Stephen drove up to the house, the idea of radically getting rid of his unloved wife no longer seemed so terrible to him. Moreover, Smith realized that he had been ready for it when he became infatuated with the young neighbor girl. Or rather, he thought he was carried away by these bourgeois, thinking that the whole world is at their feet. But as if it were not so, he thought cheerfully. Besides, Stephen goes for it for love. He is. By the way, the real estate agency that supposedly belonged to him really existed, though belonged to Stephen's friend, which in the event would confirm that he was the owner of the organization, or say that they owned the agency in shares. "It's a situation where you think she's going to listen to me?" With a sigh, Stephen Michelson asked. "After listening to a classmate, your friend didn't listen to you, and me misunderstanding." "Sadly," said Miranda, "but I'm sure if you do some digging, you'll find something on that asshole. You have the opportunity, but I don't. Betty Domnina hired a lawyer. So why don't we start dancing from there? You make a case." John spoke favorably. "All right, let's give it a try." The next day, the man got the right people involved, and in record time they gave him the whole story. Stephen Smith was indeed an Alfonso. As for the marriage scam, Adriana Macduff is his second victim so far, a police officer said. And another curious fact: prior to his marriage to Adriana, Smith rented an apartment next door to her former stepmother, Clara. Actually, the detective learned that he still visits there and, according to neighbors, is in an affair with Vanessa, niece. She lives with her aunt. There seems to be a whole gang of them. The man shook his head in amazement. "In one way or another, it is mysterious," nodded the policeman. "The aunt and her niece are also prostitutes from time to time. Well, not exactly prostitution, but love for money is a common thing for them." "Well, thanks for the information." He thanked John and shook the policeman's hand heartily. The police officer left, and Michelson began to think. He remembered how unhappy Adriana had looked when her father had married and how she had changed after his divorce. After all, the former stepmother might start to take revenge on Adriana. John thought, and grabbed the phone. Stephen wasted no time either. Adriana had given her husband the right to act on her behalf, but only in emergencies. Well, it would be soon enough, he thought, rubbing his hands together. In anticipation of a happy and carefree life, with the woman he loved. And with the help of a smart lawyer, I'm also about the gold, Adriana playfully said Stephen, kissing his wife on the shoulder. Let's take a trip somewhere. Oh, I don't know. Adriana shook her head with a sigh. I've got a lot on my plate right now. Yeah, I'm not suggesting it right now, just in a week or two. I've got a lot on my plate right now, and I'm tired as hell. In a week or two. Well, can we? Where shall we go? I'd like to go somewhere in the mountains or a body of water. In general, closer to nature, Stephen answered and hastened to add. But if you want a different place, I'll offer my thoughts. Anything you say, my queen. And you know, the idea of a body of water is not bad. Adriana smiled. But it's too cold to swim. But I'd love to go boating. And I would also like to be at some campground to be in complete solitude. Dreamily said the husband, just you and me. How do you feel about vacationing in a tent? I've never tried it. But why not try it? What do I mean? In the morning, when Adriana arrived at work, she saw John in the waiting room. Hi, classmate. She said hello cheerfully. I'm here to see you, John. Although it wasn't that obvious. And what brings you to me dazzlingly? Adriana smiled. She looked so happy jealously, thought the admirer. I need to talk to you, said discreetly. Well then, please do. Invited Adriana and added then as hospitable hostesses tea, coffee, juice. No, thank you, declined. Michelson cut to the chase. Adriana, I want to talk to you about your husband, my husband, your husband. Your husband, Stephen, is an Alfonso and a marriage scammer. Aha. He's also an occasional doping addict. Tell me honestly, did Miranda tip you off? No, not Miranda. John decided not to give away a classmate. Stephen Smith is reportedly connected to Shut Up. Be honest. You're jealous. You're jealous. But that's not what this is about. John answered honestly and didn't want to hear any nasty things about my husband. Go away. All right, Adriana, I will. Michelson replied with sadness in his voice and handed her a business card. Call me any time of the day or night. Have a good day. And he walked out. Adriana was returning from a business trip, tired but satisfied. She had managed to do her chores early, and now she would surprise her husband by seeing the light in the cottage window. Adriana smiled and thought fondly of her husband. God, I love him so much. In a week's time we will go to the lake. It will be very romantic. Just me and Stephen. Deciding to put the car in the garage. Later, she took off her shoes on tiptoe and snuck up to the house. From the open living room window came soft music and Stephen's voice. He had no idea about anything. With a grin, Tomas said to him, in love with me like a cat, and doesn't even realize that her days are numbered. We must get rid of her. Stephen sounded like he was drunk. There was a gurgling noise. Apparently, the husband was pouring himself his favorite cognac. You know what Hare said? I missed you. My bed is so cold without you in it. Adriana thought grudgingly. There's nothing of yours here at all. And suddenly she was afraid. She doesn't know what he's talking about. She's in love with me like a cat. She doesn't even realize her days are numbered. Adriana remembered her husband's words and sang. It was a terrible thing to realize. Stephen was talking about her. Apparently he was talking to a woman. Her shoes fell out of her hands with a thud, and Adriana picked them up and ran to the car. She stepped on the gas and drove off, only to go to her father's house. Adriana didn't want to upset him. Miranda must be offended, and it was getting late. The young woman stopped at the entrance to the cottage village and reached for her purse. Lucky. And oh, miracle business card was there. John, she exclaimed. John, were you right? Stephen, he's trying to kill me. Robert, where are you right now? Excited? Asked by a classmate. At the entrance to the cottage community. Are you in a car? Yeah, don't go anywhere. I'll be there in 15 minutes. John arrived by cab. Where are you going now? He asked, having listened dumbly for years. I don't know. You can go to the office. You don't have to go to the office. Let's go. Stones, let's go. Let's go. Come on. Let me drive. Adriana stayed with John for 2 days. All the while his men were tapping Stephen's phone and monitoring the house. She apologized to Miranda, and the friend immediately rushed to May Feig with sympathy. She said, hugging Adriana, "And it is still unknown who is poor here," broke the idyll. John's voice broke the idyll. While the friends were making up, a classmate was cooking Greek meat. The compromise on the whole group is solid, but more on that later. The meat is ready. So the girls went to dinner. John served the meat with a bottle of marvelous pink wine while he went to get glasses. Miranda whispered to her friend, "I look at you and imagine you are Miranda's family." So Miranda thought, "Okay," nodded Adriana. "Just be quiet." I'm quiet. But for a successful return from a business trip, winked Michelson, recalling glasses. The next day, Adriana drove home. When she entered the cottage, her husband was watching television. Looking at his red eyes and slightly puffy face, it was easy to guess that Stephen had been taking a lot on his chest all these days. "Oh, hi. Why didn't you call? I would have met you. What were you singing the other day? I missed you." Problem. Stephen. "Really? Stephen, I'm not alone. Who am I with?" He was confused. Adriana opened the door and Slaga and Vanessa entered, followed by John and 3 other men. "It is nice to see you," with a weighty tone, the former stepdaughter said, and turned to her rival. "Vanessa, is that your name? Have a seat. Let's go next to Stephen. You two seem to have been together. You look good together." So this is how one of the men started out. "You Smith, Stephen, are charged with organizing a crime." "What crime do you know?" "The murder of your wife." "But I didn't kill anybody." "So no one's saying you did." "Adriana, as you can see, is alive." "It wasn't me who screamed." Stephen pointed at the fox. "It was her cultural thing," one of the men said. Stephen received a 5-year sentence. His failed accomplices got off with probation. After a while, Vanessa realized she was pregnant and hoped for a retrial. "Adriana, I have a chance." John asked her hopefully when she came to his house to pick up some of her forgotten things. "There's definitely hope." Adriana smiled. 2 years later, after another hard day at work, John, an investigator for the prosecutor's office, drove up to the flower stand to buy large lilac chrysanthemums, Adriana's favorite flowers. "And we've been waiting for you," said the chrysanthemum seller with a smile. "They're fresh." Well and wonderfully, he smiled, and having bought an impressive bouquet, hurried home. The day before yesterday, John took the most wonderful baby girl in the world from the hospital with Adriana Katya. It was worth hurrying for that. "Hi." He smiled as he handed his wife the flowers. "Thank you," Adriana whispered, and Katya just fell asleep. "God, girls, you should know how much I love you."
Subscribe and click the bell.
"Kevin, darling, can you hear me?" Christina said embarrassedly into the phone to her husband. "Do you have a minute?" At the other end of the phone, you could hear an agonized sigh. "Christina, what is it?" "Can you talk normally? I'm very busy right now." The wife involuntarily bit her lip with resentment. She did not understand why she could deserve such a neglectful attitude from her beloved Kevin. "It's nothing much." "Really," she said carefully, hoping her husband wouldn't get angry. "I just wanted to tell you that I missed you so much. I love you." Her husband answered something inaudible, but Christina did not ask again, for fear of causing her husband even more irritation. "You better tell me, how do you feel?" Asked suddenly with genuine concern in his voice, Kevin. "What do the doctors say? Is the baby healthy?" Christina's face instantly lit up with a joyful smile. So he did care about her and their child, and the rest must have been just her imagination. The doctor had said it could happen to pregnant women from an overabundance of hormones. It's common, right up until the last trimester. "Yeah, I'm fine," the mommy-to-be replied happily. The The doctors say that me and the baby, we are both healthy. Everything is going great. I will give birth in about a week. Well, that's the important thing. The most important thing is that you, my son, are fine. You don't have to worry about the rest," calmly answered the husband, and in his voice, Christina caught some new satisfied notes. It was as if Kevin had convinced himself of something that his young wife was not supposed to know. "Kevin?" Christina asked again. "What now?" "Honey, hurry up. You're going to make me late for the stockholders' meeting. You know what kind of piranhas are on the board. I was wondering how Clara is doing. She complained to me the other day that her blood pressure's up again. The doctor prescribed her pills, but I'm not sure she's taking them. Could you make sure she doesn't forget them while I'm away?" Clara was the mother of her husband, Kevin, and consequently, Christina's own mother-in-law. Despite the fact that the relationship between mother-in-law and daughter-in-law was extremely strained, Christina always tried to help in any way she could. The young woman was especially worried about the health of her mother-in-law. She always felt bad as soon as she and Kevin began to discuss joint plans for the future, which did not involve Clara. Of course, Christina guessed that the cause of frequent indispositions of her mother-in-law is banal jealousy. But out of respect for the honorable age of her mother-in-law and her sincere love for Kevin, the girl tried not to pay attention to the constant reproaches and nags to her on the part of Clara. "Don't worry, Christina. Everything is fine with Mom." Smiling at his wife in the phone, Kevin replied, "You know how impressionable she is." Again, probably, she thought of something too much. That's why her blood pressure went up. "Yeah, I guess so." She hesitantly stretched out her spouse, but reminded him again. "And still control the medication, okay? It's a hypertensive crisis. It's no joke. Okay, Christina, I'm really in a hurry right now. Why don't I call you again tonight, and we'll talk? I can't talk anymore." Kisses. After that, Christina's husband abruptly disconnected. The pregnant woman sighed and quietly went to her bed. She needed to rest as much as possible. That's what the doctor said. The baby was developing normally, but there were still small risks of complications. Therefore, the doctor monitored the condition of the young woman in labor, preferring to reinsure herself once again, so as not to jeopardize the life of mother and child. "Something, Christina. Your husband is not very happy about the upcoming addition to the family, right?" Miranda asked her mockingly. A young girl pregnant with triplets. Miranda was from the village and had a very rough temper for some reason. Sometimes it seemed to Christina that her roommate was basically unpleasant when others were doing well in life. Miranda herself would never meet anyone after discharge. Her boyfriend dumped her as soon as he found out she was pregnant, so the girl prepared to raise her children alone. Christina felt sorry for her, though she was sometimes amazed at the poor girl's tactlessness. But Christina understood that such behavior for Miranda, most likely a defense mechanism that helped her to accept the fact that she now somehow will have to raise 3 children at once and without any support. "No, Miranda, why not?" Question for question, Christina answered her. "Kevin loves me very much, and he was just asking about my health." Yeah, I heard." The neighbor rudely interrupted her. "And he was in a hurry to get somewhere. I guess that's no way to talk to your favorite wife." "What are you talking about?" Christina didn't understand her. "I mean that he was trying to get rid of you on the phone, as if he was so fed up with you." A satisfied smile flashed across Miranda's face. She had managed to awaken some doubts in Christina. I wouldn't be surprised if he wasn't at work right now, but with some girl in a hotel room somewhere. Champagne, roses, and all the classics, just the way men like it. "Miranda, please stop saying such nasty things. The neighbors shouted at her, "But why do you take such pleasure in spoiling other people's moods? Why should they all walk around smiling? And I alone should weep that I and my boys will not have a father. But chickens like you, everything is always good, and a handsome husband, a businessman, and a huge house, and even mother-in-law does not spoil their lives. And the main thing is, why is it so that some people get everything and others get a hole from a bagel? I may also dream of a normal husband, and now I have to go back to the village with 3 children. God, if I had only known then that everything would turn out this way, I would have made an abortion right away and would not have dragged it out until the last minute, hoping that this red-haired guy would come to his senses and come back to me." Miranda's face twisted and tears streamed down her face. A second later, there were first thin sobs and then full-blown sobs. "Miranda, honey, why are you doing this to yourself?" Christina clung to her, trying to hug the unhappy girl. "I'm sure you have some understanding people in your village. Maybe they will help you as neighbors, and then suddenly your boyfriend as his children will see so immediately and return to you. Where else will he find such happiness?" Miranda picked up Christina with one hand and grabbed her stomach with the other. "Ouch!" Suddenly the girl cried out. "What? What is it?" Worried Christina. "Ouch!" Miranda cried out again, but this time much louder. "Christina, call the doctor quickly. It seems to have started." Christina, without a moment's hesitation, ran out into the corridor and informed the nurse what had happened. Miranda was taken away to deliver the baby the same day. A couple of hours later, she returned to the room as a completely different person. Not for nothing they say that motherhood can dramatically change a woman's character. There was no trace of the former prickly girl. Miranda was always cooing about something, telling Christina about her amazing triplets. And then, when they were brought in for feeding, she had a chance to see for herself how cute they really were. For a split second, Christina even envied Miranda with white envy. Despite the fact that Miranda had an uncertain and difficult future ahead of her, she looked like the happiest woman in the world. Christina also wanted to experience this feeling, but she realized that she had only a short time to wait before she would meet her own son, lying in her room at night. Christina stroked her belly and reflected on life. She was 30, and this was her first child, to whom she was going to give all the love that had lived in her heart since long ago. Every single day she thanked God for giving her such a wonderful husband like Kevin. They met only 3 years ago, and that meeting really changed the young woman's life. Christina then worked as a simple saleswoman in a bookstore and did not expect not only to get married, but even to enter into any serious long-term relationship. With Robert, her last boyfriend, the girl broke up only a month ago. He decided that he was worthy of much more than some cashier, so he preferred Christina to some girl. Christina was very upset then. She really liked Robert, and she did not rule out that they could get married. However, the young guy suddenly wanted fame and money. In spite of the fact that before that he worked as an ordinary cab driver and never complained about anything, the girl could not understand how this girl was able to charm her man. But in fact, Robert left her a very long and boring letter in which he said that she, Christina, was too down to earth for him, while his soul longed for something sublime and extraordinary. That day, Christina stood at her workplace and laid out stationery in the cashier's area, when suddenly she was approached by a tall, trim brunette in an expensive suit. "Girl, excuse me, and you will help me choose a book as a gift, something on art, but very well designed. I need it for my business partner." Looking up and down into those stunning dark blue eyes, Christina realized that she had never seen a man with such a rare appearance. He looked like he had stepped out of the pages of a fashion magazine. And if he was not standing in front of her now, she would not have believed that men with such spectacular appearance existed, but, among other things, she was pleasantly surprised by the politeness with which the customer addressed her. Usually people in the hall just yanked her in different directions, wanting to get a quicker building, and at the same time and pouring on the poor saleswoman the entire portion of their own bile accumulated during the day. Here, everything was quite different. Of course, what kind of book do you need? Painting or perhaps architecture? The beautiful stranger smiled charmingly and asked to show him all the most expensive books on painting that they had in the store. Finally, after half an hour, the man chose a Dutch painting album with a gold-plated cover. "It's beautiful." Christina praised the purchase. "I can see that you are a man of taste." "Thank you," calmly said the man, and again gave the girl one of his stunning smiles. "You are a wonderful professional in your business, so patiently help me to choose all this. I hope my partner will be satisfied." The stranger paid, and Christina did not see him again. However, a week later he showed up again, and again asked the girl to pick up a good book for him. Only this time something from modern literature, something fashionable. "What are the older ladies reading today?" he asked. Christina said to herself as she led him to a shelf of modern dramas. "Don't be surprised," he said softly. "It's not for me. It's for my mom. She asked me to bring her something new. And I, alas, am not in the trend, if I may say so, what intellectually savvy women read nowadays. The same as 100 years ago." Christina laughed. The key to the success of any women's novel is a charming protagonist and a gentle heroine. And then everything is built around the two of them. Out of the corner of her eye, Christina noticed how the customer looked at her a little more closely than usual. "Excuse me, but would you consider it impertinent if I asked you your name?" Christina was slightly confused and then nodded at her name tag. "I'm sorry, I didn't notice." Christina then, when the stranger said the girl's name, she thought the floor swayed under her feet. Her name had never sounded so beautiful. "My name is Kevin." He gave her a slight nod, then gently shook her fragile little hand. "Christina, what are you doing tonight? You know, it's been a long time since I've met a girl who has read so many books and knows almost all of them by title and cover color. I'm kidding, of course, but I really like you. How about we go out to dinner tonight?" "Oh," she hesitated. "It's so sudden. I don't even have anything to wear." "That's not a problem." Kevin spoke quickly. "If you want, we'll stop by the boutique right after work and get you a cocktail dress." "What time do you get off?" No. No way." The girl was embarrassed and began to wrap her flaming face with her palms. She was becoming unbearably ashamed at the mere thought of the fact that this amazing man offered her to buy an evening dress, which in addition, and probably cost a lot of money. "I don't think you can find a dress in a boutique for a few thousand." "Excuse me." Kevin was embarrassed in turn. "I'm probably rushing things, and you're not used to this. It's just that the art book we picked out together, my partner was absolutely thrilled with it. So I wanted to thank you in a human way. You can't even imagine how you unknowingly helped me close one of the best deals for my company." That's how Christina found out that her sudden admirer was also a big businessman. In the end, they agreed that they would meet at 9 o'clock at her house, and from there they would go to the restaurant. Christina could not believe her luck, and in general that such a solid luxury man as Kevin invited her on a date, even out of a sense of pure gratitude. The girl has always been pleased to spend the evening in the company of good and well-mannered people. The first dinner together had gone splendidly. Kevin turned out to be a very interesting and attentive interlocutor, and in conversation he constantly emphasized how pleased he was to meet on his way such a charming, but at the same time intelligent girl. In the end, he charmed poor Christina so much that she was ready to give him her heart that very evening, even though she realized how foolish it was. The first date was followed by a second, and then a third and fourth. Kevin and Christina officially became a couple and did not hide their relationship. Love bloomed fresh roses in her soul, and the simple bookstore clerk could no longer hide her feelings for the businessman, especially since he made it clear to the girl that this is the kind of bride and dreamed of all his life. Christina, I promise you, if you become my wife, you will never have to work in the store again, Kevin assured her. After a couple of months, he held in his hands a tiny velvet box, inside of which lay a gold ring with a magnificent diamond. I want you to add to my home library, he told her, smiling, so that you can continue the work of my parents and bring something new and beautiful into our home and my life. I firmly believe that you will be the only woman in this world who could do something like that. Tell me, Christina, will you marry me? Christina felt tears running down her cheeks. It seemed that she had gone from real life to a fairy tale. Is it possible? But what would happen if she woke up now and it was all just a magical dream? God, I can't believe it's real. Crying with happiness, said Christina. Oh my God, of course it is. Yes, the man hugged her, and in that moment they felt like the happiest people in the world. Kevin literally carried his bride in his arms, constantly making her expensive gifts in the form of jewelry, exquisite clothes and perfumes, and of course, the best books he could find. Soon the businessman announced to his mother that Christina officially moves into their mansion. However, Clara, becoming clearly insane, jealous of her only son to her future daughter-in-law, was adamantly opposed to both the move itself and the wedding in general. Son, have you decided to reduce me to the grave? Asked an elegantly dressed woman in her 60s. What, Christina? What moving? What wedding, after all? Do you think that if father is no longer alive, you can disgrace our family forever? Mom, you always exaggerate everything. Kevin replied with a slight smile. You've seen my fiancée. She's the purest, kindest girl I've ever met in my life. Don't you want your son to be happy? Have you decided that you will be happy with her? Question for question, the mother answered, angrily squinting her ice blue eyes. With this orphan, practically a beggar without 5 minutes. What happened to the parents? Would you remind me? Mom, I'm begging you. Her son tried to calm her down, but there was no stopping her. If I'm not mistaken, they died in a fire when your Christina was 9. Yeah, so what? Kevin said defiantly. So Kevin, that girl has had a huge psychological trauma in her head since she was a child. The woman expressively twisted her finger at her temple, alluding to her son's fiancé. Indeed, one could understand the feelings of a woman who now has to share her son with his young wife. But so, alas, it happens sooner or later in all families. The only thing that comforted the girl was that Kevin, for all the loyalty of his mother's character, always remained on the side of his future wife. Even when Clara expressed a desire to personally help Christina with the choice of wedding dress, the groom decided that it was a bad idea and did not let his mother spoil the holiday. It was necessary to see how green then the future mother-in-law of the girl. It seemed that she hated Christina with all her gut, so much that she was ready to sizzle her with just one look. The wedding was held in one of the most expensive restaurants in the country. Since Christina herself had almost no friends and family, most of the guests were high-ranking personalities from the business circles of her young husband. Unfortunately, the only close person of the girl's Aunt Betty, who brought up her niece after the tragic death of her parents, died shortly before Christina met her husband. Therefore, Christina simply had no one to invite to the wedding, unless you counted a few co-workers at the bookstore. Christina kept her dignity and tried her best to prove to herself and her husband that she too could be an elegant young lady of society. Kevin appreciated the girl's behavior and later praised her for not giving his mother an excuse to poke her nose into their business with Christina. The girl was immensely proud of herself that night. Afterwards, she made several attempts to reconcile with Clara, but everything was in vain. No matter how much the girl tried to please the future mother-in-law, it was simply impossible. Time and again, the woman reproached Christina that she is not educated enough, poorly aware of the rules of etiquette, and in general, absolutely not suitable for her son. Obviously, before her mother-in-law already had in mind for Kevin the so-called favorable party. Christina, with her appearance, just confused the mother of the businessman all plans. The first year of married life became for Christina the happiest. Kevin's business flourished, but he found enough time for his young wife, although he felt a lot of pressure from her mother. Clara strenuously pretended that Christina as a person and daughter-in-law for her simply does not exist. However, Christina was not against and look in her eyes invisible, just so as not to hear once again in his address offensive, but most importantly completely unfounded accusations and reproaches. When at the end of the first year of marriage, she and Kevin could not have children, Slaka frankly rejoiced. "Well, son, the whole truth about your Christina has come out. She's not gonna give you kids, you can count on it. I wouldn't be surprised if it turns out that she had an abortion when she was young. So she can't have children, and she didn't tell you about it, just to marry you as soon as possible. Why are you talking about me like that? Christina couldn't stand it. It happens often and in many couples. The first year is not an indicator of whether your son and I will have children or not. Maybe we should just wait a year. I'm willing to go to counseling, but I'm sure I don't have any health problems." My mother-in-law just snorted contemptuously. "What kind of guarantees can be here? That you in the city counseling center do not have girlfriends? Or what, you Banal there do not buy a certificate? Do you think I'm stupid? No, honey. You're not fooling me. I knew right away what you were." Clara squinted at me evilly. "My boy couldn't possibly be interested in a gray moth like you, unless you did something on purpose to do so. But mark my words, if you put something on my Kevin, I'll bury you in the damp earth myself. Do you understand me?" Kevin, who was present, came close to his mother and said seriously, "Mom, until when are you going to say all this nonsense? What kind of nonsense are you talking? You're a cultured woman after all, and our business with Christina, let alone having children, doesn't concern you at all. I'll argue with you on that one, son." His mother answered him in the same tone. "I am very much concerned with the affairs of your offspring, because who, you tell me, is going to run the company when you're gone? I think I'm well enough to think about such things." Kevin responded with wicked irony in his voice. "Son, we're living in dangerous times." The mother-in-law's lips quivered. "It's unclear what's going on everywhere. Don't you want to be sure that your own son or daughter will be the head of the house after you leave? And I see you're going to bury me already?" Kevin snapped at her, but Christina, whose heart at that moment was breaking with pain for the people close to her, could not stand it and exclaimed, "Clara, Kevin, that's enough. Please do not quarrel because of me." Tears glistened in the eyes of the unhappy daughter-in-law for the second time this evening. "Clara, if you insist, I can bring you a certificate from the hospital that I'm fine." You will choose the clinic where I will be examined to avoid the possibility of a substitute diagnosis on my part. Don't even think about it, Christina. Kevin roared. She has no right to condemn herself to such an utterly despicable and humiliating ordeal. What is this, the Middle Ages? You and I will figure out when to have children on our own, without the spectacle of this. At that moment, Kevin's mother had a heart attack. Oh, I don't feel so good, son. Mom, stop clowning around. Kevin calmly responded, Don't think I'll fall for your tricks again. Wait, Kevin, what if she's really sick? Christina got worried and rushed to her mother-in-law. Clara, where do you have a heartish? The mother-in-law hesitantly touched first the chest area and then the head. Tonometer? Christina? Please hurry up. I think my blood pressure has spiked again. The daughter-in-law rushed into the living room to get the device, and when she returned, she heard only a scrap of conversation between mother and son, in which Clara strongly warned her son. Keep in mind, son, if you don't have children in a year, blame yourself. The girl stood with the tonometer pressed to her chest and froze, unable to move. So Clara had tricked her again. But why? Why did she hate her so much and turn her own son against her so zealously? Was it only because Christina had the misfortune to be born into a very poor family? The thought of it was so disgusting to the girl that she quietly put the pressure gauges in place and silently went up to her room. And now, almost a year later, she was expecting her and Kevin's first child. Christina really wanted to name the boy Ethan in honor of his grandfather, but did not know whether Kevin himself would approve of such a choice. However, her husband during the pregnancy noticeably distanced from her, and the girl even began to worry about it. He was almost no interest in his wife, more often late at work. Christina herself timed and again caught the gloating glances of her mother-in-law. The future mother did not know what could be associated with such behavior of her husband, and therefore all the time was tormented by speculation, what she did wrong. After Miranda's roommate Christina gave birth, Kevin stopped calling his wife. With each new day, the anxiety in the soul of the woman only increased. After all, when she dialed her husband's number, he invariably dropped the call. What is this business? Christina said to herself, winding circles around the ward. She was about to give birth. She had not heard a word from her husband. Is that any way to treat a pregnant wife? Christina thought. Did Clara have a hand in their relationship? But she couldn't be crazy enough to risk the health of her own grandchild. What if something terrible happened to Kevin? God, I wish I'd thought of that before. It flashed through the girl's mind. She immediately called her mother-in-law. However, she was waiting for the same picture as in the case of calls to her spouse. No one answered the phone, or the line was immediately cut off. What the hell is this? Walked backward-forward the girl, when suddenly felt how much she had tightened inside her stomach. Here we go, Christina realized, and immediately called for a nurse. 4.5 hours later, Christina gave birth to a strong, healthy baby boy. Congratulations, said the satisfied midwife, handing her her son. 3,500. A real big boy. Have you thought of a name yet? Ethan. Christina responded instantly, no longer able to change anything. If Kevin didn't answer the phone, she would make the decision for both of them. Ethan, that's a nice name, soft, the nurse said, and then took the baby away from the woman for all the necessary procedures. Don't worry, Christina. We will bring you a boy for feeding. Only a little later. Has the husband been informed? Yes. Christina lied in a weak voice. He said he'd be here soon. He's just busy at work at the moment. The midwife and nurse looked at each other, but said nothing. A few hours later, little Ethan was brought to Christina, and she was able to admire her tiny son for the first time. "How sweet you are! What a beautiful, wonderful, most favorite boy," Christina said, kissing her son on his forehead and hands. After feeding Ethan, the young mother immediately fell into a pleasant sleep. "Rest properly. You will need it now," the nurse admonished her. "You won't be able to sleep properly for at least 6 months." "I don't care," Christina answered her as she fell asleep. "The main thing is that Ethan is with me now." A week after the birth, no one came to pick her up. From excitement and anxiety, Christina almost lost her milk. However, the doctors advised her to calm down. "Moll, maybe just something happened at home that now no one can meet her." Imagining the worst, Christina called a cab to the maternity hospital and went home. She and her husband and his mother lived out of town, so the cab driver demanded payment up front. He said there might not be enough gas, so it was better to fill up on the way. Christina obediently gave him the card. However, after a couple of seconds, the driver unhappily said, "Lady, are you trying to cheat me?" Christina hesitated. "I do not know what you mean." "My husband put enough money on my card to pay for the cab ride." The driver turned to her and shook her own card in the air. "Zero, girl, zero. There's no money on your card. Or is it blocked?" Christina, cradling a crying Ethan at that moment, only frowned. "Are you sure? Check it again, please. I distinctly remember there being enough funds in there." The cab driver shrugged silently and put the card to the reader again. The same unpleasant beeping sounded. "Alas," he said, "either pay or get out." Christina had no idea what was going on, but just in case, she rummaged through her purse and emptied out all the cash she could find, including change. There was only 60 cents in there, no more. "Is that enough to get me at least halfway there?" she asked the driver. He looked skeptically at the crumpled bills, but did not refuse. "I'll take you to the gas station, and then you can do it yourself." "All right," the young mother nodded. "Thanks for that." Having fulfilled his promise, the cab driver dropped her off at a small gas station, where Christina was able to wash and feed little Ethan and change his diaper. After that, the young woman threw her bag with baby things over her shoulder and dialed her husband's number and then her mother-in-law's number. A mechanical voice answered her that the subscriber was out of network, and here Christina was worried. With a quick step, the young mother covered the remaining distance to their cottage village. Although it was only a few miles, she felt terribly tired and exhausted. When she reached the gate of her house, the woman pressed the bell button several times before Clara's disgruntled face appeared on the intercom screen. "What do you want?" asked her mother-in-law in a tone as if she was standing in front of some homeless gypsy, not Clara's own daughter-in-law. "Thank God," Christina exhaled. "I was afraid something had happened to you." "It's me, Christina. Please open up. Kevin didn't come to pick me up for some reason, and he's not answering his phone. There must be something wrong with the connection. Look who I brought you." The girl smiled and showed the intercom screen her little grandson, but her mother-in-law's face reflected nothing but disgust. It was the last thing Christina had expected to see. "So, why are you showing me your freak? You'd think I'd be interested in what kind of puppy you gave birth to." The daughter-in-law was literally numb, unable to utter a single word. Then the intercom screen went off, and a couple minutes later the door of the mansion opened. From there, without hurrying, Clara came out and slowly approached the wicket, which was still closed. Christina pressed her heated forehead against the cold metal of the decorative lattice, unable to accept the reaction of her husband's mother. "Why did you come?" Her mother-in-law asked her again. "It's not enough for you that you broke my son's heart, had a child from some lover. So now you want to throw him into our care? No, my dear, you will not succeed." The old woman wagged her index finger menacingly in front of Christina's face. "That's with whom you fattened your puppy. Go to him and go. And forget about our family forever. Kevin will mail you the divorce papers later." "Clara, what are you talking about?" Outraged, gasping from shock, Christina. "This is your grandson, your son Kevin. I never cheated on him with anyone. I swear." "You'll swear it in church, if you have the guts." Her mother-in-law threw it back at her. "Neither my son nor I want anything more to do with you. Is that clear to you? If you don't want Kevin to sand your reputation down so that you can't get a job in this town, you'd better get out of here while you still can. We don't want any loose girls in our family." With these words, Slaga turned around and silently headed back into the house, paying no attention to the crying, the sobs of her unhappy daughter-in-law with a newborn baby in her arms. Now the young woman realized what had happened. Lord, she had thought some terrible tragedy had happened to her husband and mother-in-law. Knave. Turns out Clara had somehow managed to turn Kevin against her. But what could she tell him so that he unconditionally believed in this unfair, and most importantly, absolutely stupid lie? Wanting to understand what had happened, Christina went on foot back to the city to come to her husband's office to dot all the I's and cross all the T's. Christina got to her husband's office, being almost exhausted. With great difficulty, she managed to persuade the guard to let her through. The woman imagined how it looked from the outside, with a bag over her shoulder, covered in road dust, and with a baby in her arms. What did she look like now? However, everything compared to the last chance to see her husband and finally talk to him. Approaching his office, Christina took a few minutes to gather her courage. Strangely enough, no one was visible nearby. Even the place of Kevin's secretary was empty. And at that moment, the young mother heard strange sounds coming from her husband's office. Pushing the door open with her free hand, the woman stepped confidently inside. However, the sight that opened up to her completely de-energized Christina, making her legs go absorbent cotton. "Christina!" Kevin hurriedly corrected himself. "What are you doing here?" The secretary, a tall girl with long curly hair and huge swollen lips, only looked at her boss's wife contemptuously from head to toe, then easily jumped down from the table. The damsel defiantly threw on her jacket and, leaving the office, said to Kevin, "Call me when you're done." When she and her husband were alone, the woman immediately attacked her husband with reproaches. "Kevin, what is the meaning of this? Don't tell me I got it all wrong. You mean you don't even lock the door anymore, so sure that you and that girl won't be disturbed? Why didn't you come and get me? You didn't even call me. I walked from the gas station to our house and then back, because your mother wouldn't let me and her grandson, our son by the way, into our house. And now you're cheating on me. How long has this been going on?" Why, instead of remorse, she read on the face of her husband only contempt. She'd never seen him like this before. "Are you not even ashamed?" she asked her husband in a weak voice. A cheeky smile played on Kevin's lips. "Mom did the right thing, and what, in fact, can I do?" In response, Christina gave him a confused, uncomprehending look. "Are you saying that you don't understand anything?" Kevin interrogated her caustically. "You dare to stutter about it?" He nodded dismissively at the newborn Ethan. "Is that my baby?" "I don't understand anything, Kevin. Explain it to me." Christina sobbed. At that moment, Ethan woke up in her arms and cried softly. Kevin clutched his head and ruffled his beautiful dark hair. His face burned with a wild blush, as if he were sick, but his eyes remained as cold as ice. "Look," he said to his wife, after a few minutes, showing her some pictures on his phone. "Now you tell me, how do you explain this, and who is this strange man hugging you, my pregnant wife, in some cafe?" Christina leaned over to the smartphone screen to get a better look at the series of photos she was pictured in, supposedly with her lover, flipping to the right 5 photos in a row. Christina felt her legs grow colder and colder with each new photo. Finally, she carefully sat down on the office chair and placed Ethan on her husband's desk. "Jesus," she whispered. "Kevin, where did you get those pictures?" The woman's eyes flashed with such intense desperation that it was physically impossible for her husband to lie to her. "What's the difference?" "Mom sent them," he finally admitted. "She was watching you just before you went into labor. She sensed the baby wasn't mine, so she tried to get proof." "Proof of what?" "Kevin is my classmate Jacob. I hadn't seen him in almost 15 years. We ran into each other at the center that day. He offered to help me carry my bags to a cab. If that were true, he wouldn't have touched you so boldly." Kevin shouted stubbornly, "Don't yell like that. You've already scared our son," shouted to him, unable to contain her spouse's feelings. "Yes, I went with him to the cafe. We had coffee and friendly. I repeat, especially for you, in a friendly hug, and that's all. Nothing happened. That's not my son, don't lie to me." The businessman continued to stand his ground. "How do I know you haven't met him before? And this child is not his. We can do a DNA test if you're so overcome with paranoia." Couldn't resist a little sarcasm, Christina. "But how would you feel about that? What kind of trust are we talking about here?" Kevin made a big circle around his office, and then with all his might slammed both fists on the table. "Insane," Christina exclaimed, barely managing to grab Ethan out from under his arms. "You and your mother have gone completely insane. How could you disown me so quickly? How could you believe her, knowing how much pain she has caused me and always intended to cause our family as well? My mother would never lie to me about such things." Kevin answered her with a grim smile. "Also, she brought me his tie, didn't she? That freak who is supposedly your classmate. That you played with him somewhere and forgot to return the tie to your lover?" Christina laughed hysterically. "Kevin, but you realize that she simply gave it to me. How can you believe in such blatant nonsense? If we're being honest, don't you carry around souvenirs from your secretary?" And then it happened that forever divided the young mother's life into before and after. In a fit of anger, Kevin flew up to his wife and slapped her across the face with a ringing slap. Christina barely stayed on her feet, clutching her son tightly to her chest, glaring at her good husband, who didn't seem to have expected such a reaction from himself. Christina walked silently to the door. "Christina, no, wait." Her husband wanted to justify himself, but she shook her head negatively. "Stay away from me," the woman said through gritted teeth. "Don't ever come near Ethan and me again." The next second, the young mother slipped through the doors like a cat and dashed for the elevator and farther downstairs. Away from this horrible person and place. Christina herself did not remember how long she ran. The young mother came to her senses only after a couple of hours. It turned out that she was sitting and crying on a playground in some yard. Little Ethan had fallen asleep in her arms, but that didn't make Christina feel any better. She no longer had anything to feed him when he woke up. From the stress she had been through, the young mother had completely lost her milk, not knowing what to do with no money and no further plan. The woman just sat on the bench and stared at one point as she continued to rock her baby. Tears of pain and disappointment rolled down her face in hail. Another betrayal of a loved one had hit Christina's nervous system too hard. "Christina, is that you?" A pleasant female voice suddenly sounded behind the young woman. Christina slowly turned around. Looking at the person who spoke, Christina even stiffened with amazement. In front of her stood her high school literature teacher, Vanessa, a diminutive older woman who was already in her late 70s, looking at Christina with the same warm, affectionate smile she had when she was a child. "Vanessa, how did you recognize me?" The woman whispered in a voice weak from fatigue and hunger. The woman only grinned in response. "How could I not recognize you, my dear? I remember all my students. I have such a photographic memory. What are you doing here? Are you sitting here all alone? How small is your baby? You must have just given birth." Christina nodded silently. Then her former teacher came closer and looked carefully into Christina's face. "My dear, I can see you need help. Let's go to my place. I don't live far away. I have hot soup. You can eat and feed your baby. Shall we?" "No, I can't," weakly objected Christina. "That I will burden you with my problems. Now I'll sit here a little rest, and Ethan and I will think of something. Right, Ethan?" Christina looked at her son with inexpressible tenderness. After that, Vanessa was convinced that her former student was in a bad way. "Christina, don't give me any ideas," she said in a slightly more stern tone. "Where are you going now in the evening with a child? To the train station? And yourself and your little one you want to jeopardize?" "No, I feel really bad, Vanessa. I'm not sure you'd be comfortable with me and my son." "Don't you worry about whether I'm comfortable or not. If I wasn't comfortable, I wouldn't have offered. Right? Come on, get up. Don't sit in the cold, you'll get sick." Some time later, Christina was already eating hot soup and a big piece of black bread. And little Ethan, washed and dressed, was lying in a cozy wooden cradle. "It was left from my granddaughter," she explained to Christina. "My daughter had given birth, and then when Lisa's crib became too small, we wanted to throw it away, but I felt too sorry for it, so I kept it." "Thank you, Vanessa." The young mother thanked her from the bottom of her heart. "If it were not for you, I really do not know where we would be now. It all came at once. There is no end to my problems." Christina drove a spoon around the bottom of the plate. "And you tell me what happened to you." The old woman advised her. "Maybe the two of us will figure it out faster. What should you do next? Are you sure you want to hear this?" Just in case, the young woman asked again. "I'm afraid there is much less pleasant in this story than disgusting. Let's get started," cheerfully suggested the old woman. "I'm an old man. I'll find something to say if it's really hard. Don't worry." And Christina told her the whole story. Finally, when the former student told her savior how her husband dared to raise his hand on her, Vanessa only splashed her hands. "What kind of a bastard is that? No, how is it possible so native son and not recognize?" I tried to explain everything to him, but he was as if in a trance. He didn't want to listen to me. Christina explained. "First he threw accusations, and then he attacked you." "What a raging dog!" The teacher finished for her. "I'll tell you something, Christina. A mother's influence on her child is very great. If it was his mother who turned him against you, then there's no choice. He'll choose her over you. That's what's so terrible." Almost crying, Christina said to the teacher, "I don't understand. At what point and why did he suddenly change so much towards me? Here is the cross that I never cheated on my husband." Christina crossed herself 3 times, and he just out of her door, immediately began an affair with his secretary. Christina, unable to bear the pressure of her feelings, burst into tears. Vanessa immediately began to comfort her. "Don't cry so much, don't worry. Now you have someone to care for you and to give your love to. If your husband does not come to his senses, then he is not your man. And such things happen in life, and you can live with it." But what about Vanessa? Burying herself in the woman's lap, sobbing, Christina whispered, "I love him so much. I can't see my life without him." Can't see or can't see? There are two big differences. The old woman grinned. If you think that you will love him all your life, then you need to understand what and how. Talk to him again. But if you feel that your love for him is over, you don't need to try and rekindle that extinguished fire. Then life has a different road in store for you. Christina stopped crying and looked at the old woman again. "Wow, and I didn't even think about it," she said. "I once loved him very much. I was ready to give my life for him. But after today," the young woman hesitated for a moment before answering. "After he hit me, it was like something inside me broke. You know, as if a rope had been sawed through, and everything, the weight attached to it, was flying into the abyss. And I, like that weight, am flying somewhere I don't know where to." Vanessa smiled. "Maybe you are not flying to the abyss, but on the contrary, you are flying up to the sky. Think about it." The old woman winked at her pupil. "Now let's get ready for bed. I'll make a bed for you and the baby in my daughter's former room. I have fresh linen and new furniture. Sleep well, and tomorrow we'll think about what you should do. You will stay with me for now. It will be easier together." Christina thanked Vanessa as she had never thanked anyone in her life. Who would have thought that after so many years, she would not only meet her former teacher, but also get from her the only one of all support, and the best help that she could give Christina at that moment. And so they all began to live together. Vanessa's payment was enough to feed not only herself, but also Christina. The young mother ate very little and used to do with the simplest products. The half-starved childhood with Aunt Betty was an influence. However, the young woman could not afford to just hang on the neck of her former teacher. So soon she went to work. Kevin, it seems, fulfilled the promise made to his wife by his mother and deprived his wife of the opportunity to get a job back in at least some more or less decent place. But Christina did not despair. She went to work to put up ads. She did it quickly. It took her a couple of hours a day, and then got the money and hurried to the store to buy all the necessary things for her son. One day, when Christina stood at the bus stop and passed at the next batch of outdoor ads, she was called by a familiar voice. "Christina, Christina, how did you get here?" Hearing the familiar timbre, the woman cringed. Less than anything else in the world. She wanted Jacob, the same high school classmate who had caused her to leave her husband, to see her like this. "I can see it's you, Christina. Stop it, please." She turned to face the man and read the mute amazement in his eyes. "What does it mean?" He asked seriously. "The last time I saw you, you were doing great. You were going to be a mother. And now, is the baby okay?" Jacob sounded worried, and Christina was pleased that he still remembered how she felt the last time they met. "Don't worry, Jacob. Everything's fine. I had a boy named Ethan." "Oh, thank God." He exhaled. "It's just that you said the doctors wanted to monitor you longer. So you're going to the hospital earlier." Christina smiled, embarrassed, and there was an awkward silence between them. "How are you doing?" Christina asked casually. "What are you doing in this neighborhood?" Jacob smiled and pointed at the bulky bags in his hands. "Yes, I want to visit my mom. I've been promising for a long time, but I haven't had time." We opened 2 new salons last week. I had to check so many documents, it was horrible. Bright eyes of the classmate looked at Christina with such calmness and kindness that she involuntarily transferred his positive outlook on life. She remembered that Jacob ran a chain of car dealerships around the city. His business was doing well. "Do you want me to help you carry the bags?" Christina asked him out of the blue. She didn't know why she wanted to offer him that now. After all, what does she have to lose? Her husband's love could not be returned to her anyway. Jacob was not to blame for the fact that Clara used him in her nefarious plans to get rid of a bad daughter-in-law, and the classmate always treated her well and even began to worry about the health of her tiny son. "Won't you get scolded?" asked Jacob, pointing to the stack of ads in her bag. "No, I still have time." The woman answered him cheerfully and picked up one of his grocery bags. As they'd approached the house where her mother lived, Christina had a strange feeling in her heart. But when they entered the entrance and began to climb to the 3rd floor, the woman's eyes— "Okay, Mom, I'll go, I guess. I will not take you, Christina, from important matters." Jacob suddenly started to go, and his mother just grinned. "Oh, look at him, Christina. What a businessman. All this business is burning under his feet, that he cannot even an extra 5 minutes with his mother to sit." Christina genuinely admired watching the relationship between Jacob and his mother. Unlike her experience and what she had seen between Kevin and Clara, there was not even a hint of the dependency and manipulative tendencies that her mother-in-law possessed to perfection. Yes, these people behaved much more simply, but there was such kindness and love in their hearts. The kind you don't see every day between parents and children these days. "Christina, then let's meet on Monday." Jacob suggested. "I'll take you right away from here and pick you up and show you everything you need to do in our salon, okay?" "Sure." The woman nodded to him. "Jacob, thank you so much again. If it weren't for you—" "Don't go on." Waved goodbye to her classmate. "That's it. I'm off. I'll call you the other day." 6 months flew by. Christina studied at Jacob's company and started working as a manager. She and her son rented their own, quite comfortable apartment, and every week they came to visit Vanessa. Jacob himself didn't mind. During the time they worked together, the former classmates felt that they were united by something much deeper than the usual working relationship. Jacob was easier to talk to than Kevin. He had a good sense of humor, but most surprisingly, he was able to get along with Ethan right away. Christina, watching them play in those moments when the man stopped by her house, was only amused. Of course, Jacob gave toys to the child, and with his mother he solved exclusively business issues in the kitchen. But they both already felt how between them formed some new, completely unlike anything else connection. And then one day the man decided to invite the young mom on their first real date. Jacob was very excited and prepared a huge bouquet of scarlet roses for his companion. Christina appreciated the compliment. She was pleased with such attention. After all, despite all the ordeals, part of her feminine soul still wanted warmth and care. Wow! And where are we going to go with such a bouquet? Surprised Christina. We will not be allowed to go to the museum. And we will not go to the museum. Jacob agreed. Let's you now put the flowers in a vase at home, and then we'll go to the opera. I got 2 tickets to the Mermaid. I think you're gonna love it. I can't believe you like opera. The woman admired me wholeheartedly. Sometimes for a change, nodded the businessman. A few minutes after Christina took the bouquet upstairs, Jacob opened the door of his snow-white car in front of her. Please, my dear lady, today a rich cultural program awaits you. Oh, don't call me lady, okay? She asked him. I have not liked this title recently. Jacob understood what she was saying and promised her not to do it again. Christina and her mother told him in general terms about what had happened, avoiding unnecessarily dramatic details. However, the main conclusion the young man had already made for himself. This Kevin and his strange mother are real monsters. After the opera, which Christina really liked very much, the couple decided to walk around the central square. That's where their first kiss happened between them. Jacob did not remember exactly how he embraced his companion. He only felt a long and strong golden thread between his heart and Christina's heart. What will happen to us now? Christina whispered to him, pulling away reluctantly from his lips. What will happen? You'll divorce your husband, we'll get married, and I'll adopt Ethan. Christina gently pulled away from her classmate. Are you seriously telling me this now? She asked, looking Jacob in the eyes. Are you really ready to live with us for the rest of your life? Think carefully. To your friends, I'll be a divorcee with a trailer. I think that's what they call it now. Jacob gave a short laugh. I don't care what anyone thinks of me. I'm going to marry you, not public opinion. Christina, I've loved you since the 5th grade. It's just that you got lost after school, and when we met, you were all ready. Don't continue. Softly said the girl and again pressed against him in a tender kiss. Jacob, there is only one thing I want to warn you about. What is it? Her companion frowned slightly. If you betray me, I'm like that mermaid. I won't survive it. My heart just can't take it anymore, and I'll turn to foam. Jacob lovingly embraced Christina, and they looked up at the huge moon hanging over their heads. Then it's in my interest to keep you from turning into a mermaid. Jacob smiled. You will remain a man, a woman, and my wife, and the mother of Ethan, and then, perhaps, of our children. Oh, Jacob, blissfully whispered Christina and pressed against the shoulder of her lover. You've always been like that since high school. What? Cheerfully asked her man. What funny? Joyfully touching the tip of his nose, Christina shrieked with happiness, and they spun in a silent dance on the sidewalk. That evening was one of the most beautiful in the young mother's life. That evening on their way back, they stopped at Vanessa's house, where Ethan was visiting. Christina asked the woman for permission to leave her son with her for a few hours, and the former teacher gladly agreed. Christina wanted to pick up her boy to go to her apartment with him. But no sooner had she and Jacob made a couple of steps towards the entrance, as the road was blocked by a huge black Jeep, painfully familiar to the young woman. Hello, wife. Kevin fell out of the cab and greeted his wife with a slurred tongue. Noticing a companion beside her, the businessman immediately dared, trying to pretend that he was fine. Kevin, why did you come here? Christina marveled at his appearance. In fact, how did you find me? The woman smelled the strong odor of very strong drink coming from her husband. Kevin had definitely had too much cognac. God, buddy, how could you even get behind the wheel in such a state? Asked Jacob. And he carefully stepped in front of Christina and closed her from her husband with his back. Kevin's gaze was cloudy, but Kevin could read the displeased expression in it. That's right, hide her from me. She's such a treasure, and if she runs away from you, you'll be looking for her for 6 months. Kevin, what do you want from me? I ask you again? Christina stepped forward. She really wanted to get this over with once and for all. How so? Her husband tried to take an upright position, but he did not succeed, so that he had to lean on the door of his own car again. I want to talk to my wife and see my son. Christina was indignant. For a second, she even lost the power of speech. Wow, and you were good. You did not waste time. Kevin said. Vaughn found another sponsor, or wait a minute. The businessman took a closer look at Jacob. So it's the same face in profile. Dan, Christina, so you were having an affair with that creepy guy after all. I guess I was fooled after all, wasn't I? Christina did something she'd wanted to do for a long time. She went over and gave her scoundrel of a husband a well-deserved slap. He wants to see his son. That's how you talk. And when we had nothing to eat, because you blocked all our cards, did you also think about your son? Or maybe when you slept with your secretary, you only dreamed of reading a bedtime story to your newborn son. You're a bastard, Kevin. The lowest, meanest person I've ever known. And speaking of Ethan, you shouldn't have come. If it makes you feel any better, he's not your son. Ethan is my child alone. And believe me, I'm raising him to be a normal person, not like you. Turning on her heels, Christina wanted to leave, but Kevin suddenly grabbed her arm. You're stupid. Don't you know what you're doing? Yeah, we had a little fight, but you should have understood me too. I pressed my mother later, by the way. She admitted that she set you up, that it wasn't your fault. Congratulations, with irony, said Christina, and pulled her elbow from his weak grip. The mystery is solved. But you're too late. I have a different life now. Christina, you're not leaving me. Kevin shouted to her and tried to hug her, but Jacob stepped in. Hey you, get your hands off her. The girl told you clearly that she doesn't want to talk to you anymore. What more do you want? You lost your chance, so go away. Who the hell are you to talk to me like that? Kevin was outraged. I'm her lawfully wedded husband, and who are you? You're a lover, a party boy. Kevin tried to hit his opponent. However, Jacob easily dodged and gave the offender a light kick in the shoulder area. It was enough to make Christina's husband unable to keep his balance and fell on his back. Fortunately, Jacob managed to pick him up in time and load him into his own car. God, what are we going to do with him now? Asked a confused Christina. Obviously, we cannot leave him here in this condition. But I don't want him to sleep in Ethan's and my apartment. Don't worry, we'll order a cab and have a tow truck take him home to his mother. And the car to the impound lot so he doesn't get any more trouble. Agreeing that Jacob's plan was logical, Christina called all the necessary services from her phone. When she gave the cab driver the address, Kevin came to his senses for a few minutes and mumbled something like, You were always right. Mom was right, but I loved her so much. Jacob glanced questioningly at Christina, but she shrugged her shoulders in confusion. Feeling responsible for her ex-husband, Christina later called back the cab dispatcher and made sure that Kevin was driven home without incident. That was the end of their unexpected encounter. Going to bed that night, Christina thought about filing the divorce papers herself. Of course, she would not claim a penny of his money, but she just wanted to close this unfortunate chapter of her life and think about what good things might await her together, ahead with Jacob. The next 2 weeks passed for Christina as usual, with work and taking care of Ethan. Every now and then she would see Jacob, and they had a wonderful time together. The man could surprise Christina with the most ordinary things, like cheesecakes in the morning or choosing her favorite movie for movie night. And as it turned out, they didn't have to spend $1 million at all to feel completely happy. Christina filed the divorce papers first, but she never heard back. Deciding that Kevin was probably being stubborn again or doing some nonsense like making another revenge plan. The woman let the situation go and went on about her usual business. Toward the end of the week on Friday, the doorbell of her new apartment rang unexpectedly. Since Christina had the day off that day, she was very surprised. She and Jacob had agreed that they would meet only in the afternoon and that he would not bother her in the morning and would let the young mother sleep. Opening the door, Christina was immediately awake, but also pale. On the threshold stood Clara. She was all in black, her eyes were full of inexpressible sadness, and it was as if she had aged 10 years. "I know you are not very happy about my visit. My mother-in-law started at the door, but I couldn't help but tell you this sad news. Clara, what's going on?" "Christina was worried sick. Come in. Would you like water or tea?" "Water will be fine." The old lady thanked her. She held a thin cotton handkerchief to her mascara-smeared eyes. "Sit down." Clara asked her when Christina brought her a glass. "I need to have a serious talk with you." "Jesus, I've lived to tell the tale. I don't even know where to begin." Christina waited patiently for what her mother-in-law would say while she looked toward the crib where her son was about to wake up. "In general, I know that you have filed the divorce papers with my son. Started it. And believe me, I would have been happy if you were separated, but circumstances have changed." "Clara, please," Christina asked her. "Ethan will be awake any minute. He needs to be fed. I haven't even put water under the porridge yet." "Ethan?" She cheered up. "That's a nice name. Christina, you don't have to divorce my son because he's gone. He's dead." Christina was struck by lightning. "What are you talking about? What do you mean dead?" "I just saw him a couple weeks ago. I wondered how he found me." "It's true, Christina. Our Kevin is gone. He's dead, okay. He died in a car accident." Clara could no longer contain her grief and burst into tears. And no handkerchief could help her absorb the grief of her son's untimely death. But how could this have happened? Christina was the only one who could find the words to ask. She couldn't believe what had happened. Her brain simply refused to accept this information. Even with all the pain that lay between them, she never wished such a fate for her husband. "After you left, he wasn't himself." The mother-in-law began. "As it turned out, he already had serious problems in business, and your departure only aggravated everything." The woman pressed her handkerchief to her eyes again. "I hope you realize that I was not the cause of the breakup of my family with Kevin." Cautiously, Christina asked. "Of course not, Christina." "I'm so ashamed now. If you only knew. Forgive me if you can," she said sincerely. And something in her words convinced the woman that Kevin's mother was telling the truth. "I've been so unfair to you, so cruel. I went and bought that damn tie myself just to belittle you in my son's eyes. You old fool." The mother-in-law was silent for a while before continuing. Her son's problems had gotten to the point where he had to borrow a very large sum of money from some very dangerous people. And then the deal he was counting on fell through. And now my son is trying to get rid of these bandits by any means necessary. But they only intensified. They said that if you don't pay back the money in time, you and your business will be finished. It wasn't an accident. Was he helped into it? With pale lips, Christina asked. "I'm afraid he helped himself." "Hardly," sighed the mother-in-law. "He started drinking very heavily. Gambling, hoping thereby to make more easy money. But it was all in vain. His whole life and business had collapsed in just a few weeks. The police said that when they found his car, it was like a tin can." An old woman cried softly. "The doctor said he had off the charts booze in his blood, so I really want to believe it was just an accident, but we'll never know the truth. God, Clara, I'm so sorry." Christina shook hands with her mother-in-law. "Believe me, if you need help, I'll do anything. Just say the word." "No, honey, it's okay. We already buried Kevin last Sunday. But thank you for your condolences anyway. It's unexpectedly nice to hear from someone you practically left in the dust. God, if you only knew how disgusted I am with myself when I realize how easily and aimlessly I ruined your life just for fun, just to show Kevin that I am better than you and you are not worthy of my son." "Calm down, Clara." Christina smiled weakly. "I've been doing fine for a long time. I'm with Ethan, and this is the greatest gift your son could give me." Her mother-in-law smiled back shyly and then asked quietly, "Christina, sweetheart, can I see Ethan, at least with one eye?" This request greatly surprised Christina. She had thought that this woman wanted nothing to do with her and her grandson. After thinking for a while, Christina asked, "Are you sure? Mind you, I'll go for him like a wolf. I'll go straight for his throat." "No, no, no." The old woman waved her hands at her. "I know that you gave birth to my son, but only now I realize that Ethan is the only thing left in this world of my poor Kevin." "Let's go then," nodded Christina and led the old woman to the crib. "Oh, he's so cute. He looks just like Kevin when he was a baby." She pressed her hands to Clara's face. "Christina, I beg you, let me see my grandson, at least sometimes, at least a couple of times a month." Christina only smiled calmly. "From the fact that I forbid you to see him, you will not cease to be his own grandmother, Clara. Of course you can communicate with your grandson. Just call me first so I can get a time frame." "Okay, I have a job, and I'm not alone anymore." My mother-in-law pressed her lips together, but didn't say anything. It was too precious to her to be able to see her with her little Ethan. Besides, she and Christina had nothing more to share. Clara had lost her son, and her daughter-in-law her husband, who had betrayed her by believing the words of his treacherous mother. Christina was right. That's where she and her son turned out to be both good. A few months later, Christina and Jacob played a beautiful wedding in nature. There were many guests among their friends and employees from the car dealership. The celebration turned out to be very heartfelt and light, not like the stuffy social reception that Christina had to endure in her first marriage. Clara was also at her ex-sister-in-law's second wedding, and to her surprise, she experienced an amazing mental comfort from the fact that she didn't have to keep her face in front of someone all the time, but on the contrary, she could just relax. She continues to socialize with little Ethan and really enjoys it. The woman was forced to sell her son's luxurious mansion for debts, and now she lives in a modest 2-room apartment where she receives her acquaintances and Christina and her grandson. Jacob and Christina still work in a car dealership. Their business is gaining momentum, and they are considered one of the most successful players in the car market. Recently, Christina delighted her husband with the news that she is expecting a baby again. The ultrasound showed that it will be a girl, so Ethan will soon have a baby sister. That's how a bad daughter-in-law was able to literally build her life anew and even help her once conniving mother-in-law realize one simple lesson. There is always room for boomerangs in life, and evil, as well as good, is sure to return to the one who committed it.